601. A complicated situation. The Shinobi sect replied faster than Roshi had expected. Teacher Sosuke has agreed to meet you, Nagato said, following Mu Yue's instructions. But he's been busy preparing for a major lecture event, so he can only see you after the lecture is over. He's giving another unrestricted lecture like last time? Roshi's heart quickened. He had heard about Sosuke's previous lecture, but hadn't attended. He'd been short on time, and frankly, uninterested. He had assumed Sosuke wouldn't teach any real techniques, only some old basic ideas. For a shinobi, knowledge is power in a concrete way. Bloodline limits are rare, the Uchiha and Hyuga clans among them, but most clans build their strength by preserving advanced ninjutsu lore. Konoha's Ino-Shikacho, Inuzuka, Aburame, and Sarutobi clans all embody how vital advanced nature transformation knowledge can be. Mu Yue hadn't taught a single secret ninjutsu in his talks, but he had analyzed elemental nature transformations from simple to profound, explaining the essence of ninjutsu and secret techniques. For ordinary shinobi, that kind of insight is hard to access, yet Mu Yue had freely shared it with whoever came. After learning what Mu Yue had done, Roshi had grown to admire him. It took a broad, generous mind to give away knowledge like that. That's right, Nagato confirmed. If that's the reason, then it's no problem, Roshi said seriously. Meeting Sosuke had been his main reason for coming to the Land of Rain, and if he had to wait until after the lecture, he considered himself lucky. He'd missed the first unrestricted lecture for various reasons. Now he would catch the second. It felt like good fortune. Does he really bear no ill will toward the shinobi sect? Roshi muttered to himself, surprising Nagato a little. Nagato then asked if Roshi wanted to return to Six Path City with him. Since the shinobi sect now had its own town, a major event like this would naturally be held there. Roshi declined. Going to Six Path City now was pointless. He couldn't meet Sosuke yet, and the lecture hadn't begun. He preferred to walk there slowly on his own, taking in the customs of the Land of Rain and occasionally helping unlucky villages deal with rogue shinobi. Nagato asked once and didn't press further. With Roshi's chakra, it was unlikely he'd run into real trouble. They parted ways, and Roshi resumed his journey. He crossed from the northern reaches of the Land of Rain, through the center, and finally into the south. The contrast between north and south was obvious. In the northern villages he'd encountered rogue ninjas and bandits. As he drew nearer to Six Path City in the south, he saw none. Instead, he passed many shinobi traveling to the lecture. Who truly is Sosuke? He wondered as he quickened his pace toward the distant town. When word spread that Sosuke would hold another unrestricted lecture, it caused a stir in Rain Ninja Village. Many Rain shinobi had attended the first lecture. Some had stayed away because of past grievances between the village and the shinobi sect, and they regretted it once the lecture's contents became known. Now, those who had gone once wanted to return, and those who had missed it wanted to attend. Quiet, secretive discussions about the second lecture multiplied until it almost seemed public. Some high-ranking Rain ninja worried that all the talk made the event look like a Rain Village affair and wanted to shut it down. Hanzo rejected that idea, saying it wasn't conducive to peace in the Land of Rain. He could have dismissed the complaint without explanation. The Rain Village answered to him, but he didn't want the impression that he was simply endorsing Sosuke's activities and enjoyed his lectures. That, he decided, would be unacceptable. Hanzo was torn. He wanted to go because Sosuke was an excellent, knowledgeable lecturer. He was curious whether Sosuke's next talk would match the quality of the first. He also feared being recognized again. Last time he had attended in disguise and been identified, which led to his coerced participation in the youth martial arts tournament, an ordeal of Kakuzu's ridicule, boasting about the fire dragon dance, and public humiliation. He still didn't know how Sosuke had recognized him in such a crowded hall. A knock came on the door of Hanzo's office. "Enter," he said. A Rain ninja stepped in, placed a letter on the desk, and announced, "Hanzo, a letter from the shinobi sect." Hanzo nodded expressionlessly. After the messenger left, he opened the envelope. It was from Sosuke, a simple invitation to attend the lecture. Did he even guess what I was thinking? Hanzo wondered, conflicted. Had it been an ordinary invitation from the shinobi sect, there would be no dilemma. He had disguised himself before because he didn't want the villagers to know he attended. Though he was somewhat inferior to Sosuke in combat, he was still a renowned demigod of the ninja world. Showing up uninvited would feel like bowing to a junior. An invitation changed the optics. Attending would now be a courtesy. Still, Hanzo hesitated. If he simply accepted, would he be giving Sosuke undue face after how Sosuke had risen by stepping on him? At last he set down a pen and began to write a reply. Listening to Sosuke was secondary. It was more important to ease relations between the Shinobi sect and Rain Village and stabilize the Land of Rain. As news of the second unrestricted lecture spread through the ninja world, neighboring lands, wind, fire, and grass heard first, while more distant countries learned a little later. The first lecture had been so successful that even some shinobi from the island nation of water took notice, though island nations rarely sent people to the mainland. The main attendees would still come from the Land of Rain and its neighbors. In Konoha, the lecture created conversation, but little action. Many ninjas were on missions at border regions or in smaller countries, and Konoha also had Mu Yue. Mu Yue had taught many through training and special sessions, and his reputation as a teacher was widely known, so most Konoha shinobi felt no need to attend Sosuke's lecture. One of Mu Yue's disciples, however, was eager to go, not to learn, but to prove Mu Yue superior and expose Sosuke as a fraud. That Sosuke can't possibly teach as well as teacher Mu Yue, Obito repeated during a training break. He wanted to go to the Land of Rain, but unlike ordinary attendees, his aim was to discredit Sosuke. If you want to go, apply. I won't, Kakashi replied calmly. He might have had the luxury to travel. There was concern about Akatsuki activity in the rain, but having recently strengthened himself through the Yang Seal, Kakashi's attention was on further improvement and a challenge to Might Guy. Obito watched the others and saw no one else interested. Going alone would be dull, and he couldn't bear the thought of missing out if Kakashi and the others used the time for intense training. At Root Headquarters, Danzo Shimura was watching new intelligence. For him, the lecture wasn't the main event. The host and organization were. If Rain Village were merely the organizer, he'd ignore it, but this shinobi sect was different. Have our agents in the Land of Rain move quickly and infiltrate Six Path City, Danzo ordered. With so many shinobi gathered, a crowded event would make mistakes more likely. It was an opportunity to collect intelligence on the shinobi sect. Danzo had already received information about the Ninshu heritage from Uchiha Madara, but he remained suspicious and wanted to verify things himself. He frowned at the thought of Madara. Since their one discussion, Uchiha Madara had not contacted him, and Danzo had no way to reach the other. He felt used. Still, whether or not Madara kept his word, Danzo was determined to obtain the Rinnegan and the Ninshu heritage. Even if he failed to get the promised wood release from Madara, his route had a wood release ninja already, so it was not a fatal setback. 602. Finally meeting the ninja master Six Paths City, Land of Rain. Roshi had been in the Land of Rain before the lecture promotion, but he'd been traveling and only arrived a day before the unrestricted lecture. He stood at the edge of the town and sighed as he scanned the scene. Apart from here, you wouldn't see this anywhere else, he thought. Most of the ninja who planned to attend had already gathered. Headbands from different villages were everywhere. A few quick glances told Roshi that many villages were represented, but the sight that made him sigh wasn't the sheer number of ninja, it was the atmosphere. Despite such a mixed crowd, Six Path City felt unusually restrained. There was hardly any trouble, and no palpable tension. Given the chaos sweeping the shinobi world lately, that calm was rare. Roshi hadn't booked a hotel. He wandered the streets instead, used to sleeping rough on long journeys. If there was nowhere to stay, he could always lie beneath a tree. Six Path City was more prosperous than he'd expected. As a newly established town, he'd assumed it would be modest. Instead, it rivaled towns he'd passed through in the Land of Rain. He noticed many buildings that had an Iwagakure architectural style and felt a strange tug of familiarity, as if Iwagakure were following him. He shook the odd thought away and kept walking. Along the way, he ran into several Iwagakure shinobi, including Kitsuchi, Onoki's son. Roshi kept his expression neutral when he saw them, no revealing reactions. It seems the village's cooperation with the Shinobi sect is strong if even Kitsuchi is here, he mused. As he looked around, he realized that most attendants weren't from the 5 great nations' big villages, but from smaller ones and non-village areas. There were almost no Konoha nin, and none from the hidden mist or hidden cloud. Iwagakure, however, had a heavy presence, possibly as numerous as the Shinobi sect's own forces. Tsunagakure came in second, with several squads present. A thought struck him. Sosuke's situation had a silver lining. In a city where so many forces coexisted, any bold move by Iwagakure to seize him would spread fast through the shinobi world. Unless Iwagakure were utterly certain they could take him, they wouldn't dare act openly. Roshi grabbed lunch at a random restaurant and continued exploring. Whispers and sudden movements pulled his attention as Hanzo, the Rain Village's famed half-god, appeared with a retinue. People around Roshi began to murmur. "Isn't that Hanzo? I didn't expect him to come to Sosuke-sensei's lecture." "No, he was invited by the Shinobi sect," corrected a Rain ninja, eyes wide with respect. "Hanzo-sama doesn't come unless personally invited." Conversation quickly shifted to the old rivalries. Sosuke had become famous after fighting Hanzo in the past. The tale of their clash and the Rain Village's attempts to trap Sosuke were common knowledge. Nearby, Hanzo's shadow clones scowled at the chatter. They always mentioned Fire Dragon Dance first. Didn't the shinobi world know any other fire techniques? If he could live over, Hanzo thought darkly, he would go back and kill Danzo Shimura when he had the chance. The Rain Village had been used in Danzo's schemes, leaving them shamed and damaged, while Danzo's side lost comparatively little. He dispelled the clone, and, as the memories returned, his face briefly darkened. Then Hanzo composed himself. Sitting in the shinobi sect's reception room, he warned Sosuke without changing expression. "I accepted your invitation, but if you suddenly ask me to cooperate in some demonstration during the lecture, I may refuse." Hanzo had no desire to be staged as teaching material. He'd lost to Sosuke once and resented the idea that he could be presented as a foil again. Mu Yue, Sosuke, smiled faintly and assented. He had not planned to humiliate Hanzo. Using him as a practical example would be unwise and disrespectful. Hanzo left for the residence arranged by the shinobi sect, relieved by the understanding. Once Hanzo departed, Mu Yue reviewed his lesson plan. The turnout was even better than the last lecture. The quality of attendees had improved. He needed the presentation to be top-notch if he wanted an S rating. To keep an eye on things, Mu Yue spread his Kenbunshoku haki over the city. Relying only on the shinobi sect's handful of guards wouldn't be enough. At first he felt nothing unusual, but then a few chakra signatures prickled at the edge of his awareness, familiar signatures that didn't belong. He activated his Byakugan and ran an appraisal technique over each trace. Name, Hirasuishoku Chakra, 8,300. Skills, Water Release Chakra, Nature Transformation, Mastery Level. Nyokudo Chakra, 7,600. Skills, Fire Release Chakra, Nature Transformation. It really is root, Mu Yue thought. Appraisal techniques were brutally accurate. Even the most sophisticated disguises couldn't fool them. If those were root operatives, Danzo Shimura might be planning something. Seizing the shinobi sect's Ninshu heritage and Nagato's Rinnegan had always been a temptation for him. Mu Yue considered Danzo's options. Direct Konoha involvement seemed unlikely in public. Danzo preferred deniable operations. The Rain Village had previously been used to lure Sosuke into traps, and weakening them further would serve Danzo's interests. Tsunagakure was another plausible ally. The Land of Wind bordered the rain and had reason to be wary of a revived rain sphere of influence, and they hadn't declared war on Konoha. From Danzo's twisted vantage, partnering with Tsunagakure made sense. Still, Mu Yue decided not to make a move. Capturing the root agents would risk exposing his own hand. Danzo had hardened his operatives against interrogation, and any commotion could reveal more and help Danzo spread false intelligence. Sometimes ignorance was a weapon in itself. The next day, the second unrestricted lecture began on time. The shinobi sect hadn't built a permanent hall. The town was still expanding, so Mu Yue used a training ground and a simple podium, much like the first time. The sparse setup didn't reduce the crowd's enthusiasm. Roshi had thought arriving 30 minutes early would be enough, but the area around the podium was already packed. How early did these people get here? Roshi muttered, staring at the sea of bodies. Sosuke truly must be skilled to pull this kind of turnout, Four Tails observed. Roshi and the beast inside him both wondered if Sosuke had any connection to the Six-Path Sage. After all, Sosuke had a disciple with the Rinnegan. With 10 minutes to go, Mu Yue arrived. The ninja who'd attended his previous lecture bowed and greeted him in unison. Sosuke-sensei. He smiled and raised a hand. The crowd automatically parted to let him walk to the podium. Roshi tried to see him but was blocked by people. Standing on tiptoe didn't help, so he gathered chakra and raised the earth under his feet until he could finally make out Sosuke's figure. The trip north hadn't been wasted. Roshi had learned much on the way, but he had come for one man. Now the lecture would begin, and he would finally see Sosuke in person. 603. Wind Dragon Breaks the Clouds. Sosuke had short brown hair and wore a long white robe, a gentle smile on his face. Roshi had a feeling that even if no one told him this was Sosuke, he would still recognize him. It wasn't about looks so much as an aura, an indefinable quality Roshi associated with a true ninja master. When Sosuke, who in the Land of Rain went by the name Mu Yue, stepped up onto the platform, the scattered crowd drew together. But what if it rains in this weather? Someone murmured. Roshi followed his gaze to the pale gray clouds blotting out the sun. He didn't mind standing, but teaching outdoors in the Land of Rain was risky. From what he'd seen in the last few days, it could turn into a soaking at any moment. Mu Yue scanned the crowd with a smile. Hello, everyone. I am Sosuke, and I will be teaching you again today. Hearing Sosuke's voice, Roshi turned back to him. If anyone should understand the Land of Rain's weather, it was Sosuke. There are still 10 minutes before the official lecture begins. In that time, I'll randomly select a few ninja. Each chosen ninja may ask me one question about their training. Mu Yue let his eyes pass over the audience, then pointed casually at a Rain Village ninja and asked the rest to keep quiet for a moment. The chosen ninja hadn't expected it. He'd thought the grass ninja beside him would be picked, since Rain Village and the Shinobi sect didn't interact often, but Mu Yue nudged him with a soft current of air, confirming it. Me? The Rain Village ninja stammered. He glanced nervously toward Hanzo, who stood a little farther forward. Hanzo's profile gave nothing away. Seeing no change in Hanzo's face, the Rain ninja relaxed and then asked, after a moment's thought, "Could you explain some techniques for water release chakra nature transformation? Everyone says water release is suited for nature transformation, but my forms are always unstable." You can't ignore the characteristics of the chakra when performing nature transformation, Mu Yue replied, first explaining why, then demonstrating 3 distinct ways to shape water release chakra. The Rain Ninja thanked him profusely, and other water release users nearby watched with concentration. Next, Mu Yue called on an Iwagakure ninja and used Earth Release Chakra Nature Transformation to answer his question. Then he called a Grass Ninja who trained in Fire Release. He was indeed calling names at random, but not recklessly. He limited the range of chakra natures covered, ensuring one representative for each major nature so everyone present could take something useful away. Nature transformation and chakra nature transformation are the foundations of the chakra system. Those who train only in Taijutsu, like Metkai, are rare exceptions. At first, nobody noticed the pattern. It wasn't until the 4th selected ninja, whose nature differed from the earlier ones, that everyone realized Mu Yue had deliberately chosen one practitioner of each chakra nature. Many admired him silently. As expected of Ninja Master Sosuke, he even thought of that for a random roll call, they thought. Others wondered how he'd managed to select so precisely. After all, while most Iwagakure ninja favor Earth Release, there are always exceptions. The fairness and thoughtfulness of his approach earned more respect than the tricks themselves. Roshi agreed inwardly. In just 10 minutes of answering questions, Sosuke's command of ninjutsu and his teaching manner were on full display. Roshi especially appreciated how Mu Yue handled fairness. He didn't start the official lecture early just because many had arrived early. That would penalize those who arrived on time. Instead, he offered a small, impartial extra for early comers without depriving anyone. And his selection had truly been random in appearance. Among the 5 chosen were ninja from large villages, small villages, and even unaffiliated ones. Quiet down. We'll begin the class now. This morning's main content is Fire and Wind Release Chakra Nature Transformation. Mu Yue coughed twice, then announced the topic. The chatter that had filled the field dropped away until there was near silence. Most of the thousands present had attended his previous open lecture and knew the rules. Those who hadn't learned to keep quiet under the weight of the atmosphere. Boom! A sudden thunderclap split the air, a shaft of white lightning brightening the dark clouds. Drip. Raindrops began to fall. Rain was commonplace in the land of rain, more so than fire falls in the land of fire, and many turned their gazes toward Sosuke, waiting for him to react. In the prior lecture, it had never rained during class. An ordinary person might have fled at the first downpour, but these were ninja. They had trained through harsh conditions and life-or-death missions. A little rain was a minor inconvenience. Roshi watched Sosuke with curiosity. He didn't expect Mu Yue to let everyone sit through a soaking. Mu Yue looked up at the sky, silently shifting from rock-breathing to wind-breathing, concentrating his breath to enter wind-breathing chakra mode. He hadn't planned lessons around the weather. He didn't need to. No matter how heavy the rain, he had a way to handle it. Swoosh! Mu Yue released chakra and leaped into the air. The strong winds whipped his white robe. He formed hand signs in quick succession, more for show than necessity, a habit to keep his 2 identities, Hayate Mugetsu and Sosuke, from being discovered. Then, after a final dragon sign, he exhaled wind release chakra that had already undergone nature transformation. Wind release, vacuum hurricane. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh! A white storm dragon erupted from Mu Yue, a terrifying hurricane that swept the area. The ninja on the ground had to brace with chakra or be thrown off their feet. The storm dragon roared and hurtled into the dark clouds. In moments, a clean gap opened, sunlight pierced through and landed on Mu Yue as he descended, drawing every eye in the field. Another roar in the sky, and then the brightness of the world jumped by several levels. The blazing sun hung high, the dark clouds were gone, as if torn away. Let's continue the class. This morning I'll be discussing Fire and Wind Release Chakra Nature Transformation. Mu Yue landed and spoke as if nothing extraordinary had just happened. The wind release users present stared at him with fervor. They weren't sure how his fire dragon dance compared, but this wind release had power and range they'd never seen at such a distance. Hanzo, outwardly still composed, was inwardly stunned. Though not an expert in wind release himself, he'd fought specialists. In terms of reach and force, Sosuke's wind release was the best Hanzo had ever encountered. How did Sosuke do it? Did he have more hours in a day than the rest of them? Sosuke looked no older than his late 20s or 30s, and yet he'd mastered 7 chakra natures at a high level. Hanzo had once assumed fire release was his strongest. After all, that terrifying fire technique had even suppressed Hanzo's water release in a disadvantageous situation. But now Hanzo couldn't be sure. The wind display had not felt as devastating as Fire Dragon Dance, but this had only been a demonstration to disperse clouds. Who could say whether that was his full power? Hanzo let the thought go. If everything was as formidable as it seemed, the reality would be frightening. Soon everyone was absorbed in the lecture. Time slipped by, and at the midday break, Roshi's mind was still filled with Mu Yue's explanations. If I'd had a teacher like him when I was young, I'd be at least twice as strong now. Roshi sighed inwardly. He didn't know wind release, but he trained in fire release. His strongest method, scorch release, was a bloodline limit formed by combining fire and earth release chakra. He found Sosuke's teaching not only skillful, but genuinely interesting. Four Tails, born with scorch release and who had not trained in conventional ninjutsu, agreed. After attending Mu Yue's class, even he felt an urge to practice fire release for fun. Completed a high-level lecture, calm, Ensing settlement. Reward obtained, chakra nature transformation insight, fire release chakra nature transformation plus 20, wind release chakra nature transformation plus 89, earth release chakra nature transformation plus 122. Lightning release. Chapter 604. The Charm of the Ninja Clan. When afternoon classes ended, the lecture rewards were immediately tallied. With so many ninja present and a high-quality participant like the Jinchuriki, the advanced class handed out unusually generous proficiency gains. Mu Yue remembered how painfully slow progress in perfect-level nature transformation could be. During the first advanced class, his fire-release chakra nature transformation had only climbed by 10 points. This time the improvement was visibly larger. He glanced at his personal panel. Skills: fire-release chakra nature transformation, perfect level, 88,000. Water-release chakra nature transformation, perfect level. Wind-release chakra nature transformation, mastery level, 9,415,000. Lightning-release chakra nature transformation, mastery level, 8,100. Earth-release chakra nature transformation, mastery level, 6,900. Of the 5 releases, 2 were already at perfect level. Among the remaining mastery level transformations, Wind Release had the highest proficiency at over 9,000, while Earth Release trailed at just under 7,000. Mu Yue planned to teach for 8 days. If every lecture earned an S-rank evaluation, Wind Release would almost certainly break 10,000. The S-rank chakra comprehension bonus pushed progress for all nature transformation skills. Even though relatively few wind users attended, the combined reward from 8 sessions would be enough. Earth Release could be nudged just past 8,000, Lightning would likely reach 9,000, and even Ice and Wood releases could pick up a little through the general chakra comprehension effect. Class dismissed. Same time tomorrow, same place, Mu Yue announced with a smile, ending the first day's lesson. The ninja scattered from the training ground and realized it was already dusk. Teacher Sosuke is incredible. Listening to him is like knowledge is pouring straight into my head, one rain ninja blurted, then froze at once. Hanzo was present this time. The speaker worried he had said too much. He glanced sideways at Hanzo and, seeing him lost in thought, felt a little relieved. I have to thank Onoki, another said. Roshi was in an unusually good mood after a full day of classes and even felt less put off by the old stubborn Onoki. If Onoki had hesitated, he might have missed Sosuke's lecture entirely. Sosuke really lived up to your recommendation, Four Tails said with a smile. Roshi rarely smiled, so Four Tails seldom saw him so pleased. It's more than that, Roshi replied. This is the start of leaving Iwagakure. It's good that it began well. He admired Sosuke's skill and deeds, but he wasn't a sycophant. Mostly, he was reassured he hadn't made the wrong choice. Whether Sosuke matched the image Roshi had formed would be confirmed when they talked after the lectures. After the first day, Roshi was indeed more eager for that conversation. On the second day, Mu Yue's lesson covered water release and yin and yang release nature transformations. He had arranged the schedule this way because his own water release had reached perfect level. His confidence in that topic's quality was high. The lecture, however, left Hanzo unsettled. The more he listened, the less confident he felt. He couldn't shake the impression that his own water release somehow paled next to Sosuke's. That shouldn't have been possible. If Sosuke's water release had been stronger, he would have used it during their fight, Hanzo told himself. He could have noticed a flaw in that logic. Sosuke's wind release was impressively strong as well, and he hadn't used much of it either. But when you're comforting yourself, it's easy to avoid uncomfortable lines of thought. It wasn't that Hanzo couldn't consider it, he simply refused to. The day satisfied many rain ninja, since most of them cultivated water release. During the break, several of them looked at the Shinobi sect's attendees with envy. The Shinobi sect's ninja had the privilege of half a day with Sosuke, and given his generous nature, he would surely be even less stingy with his own faction. Many rain ninja already respected Hanzo, but comparison breeds insecurity. Against Sosuke, Hanzo suddenly seemed ordinary, outmatched in skill and presence. Some began to wonder why they had ever attacked the Shinobi sect in the first place. At first, Hanzo had not been hostile toward Sosuke. They had met amicably, and a number of rain ninja had a good impression of him. Then negative rumors about the Shinobi sect spread through Rain Village, alleging it was an illegal organization bent on inciting war. The situation escalated. Hanzo led a team to surround and eliminate the sect, and failed, and the village's hostility grew. If the Shinobi sect had actually been a threat, people could understand the reaction. But seeing Sosuke teach and treat his subordinates well made many question how things had gone so wrong. When Hanzo passes, joining the Shinobi sect might be a good choice, some whispered. They knew little of the bigger picture, but they trusted Sosuke's strength and fairness. The Shinobi sect was also an official force within the Land of Rain, on par with the Rain Ninja. Switching sides would feel like continuing to serve the land in a different uniform. Tomorrow is a rest day. You don't need to come. Classes resume after the break, Mu Yue reminded everyone as class ended. The schedule had already been announced, but he didn't want anyone to get so absorbed that they missed it. He added, almost casually, also, on the rest day, there will be some Shinobi sect activities within the city. If you're interested or considering joining the sect, feel free to come and take a look. His recommendation caused no resentment. After all, with teaching this good, an invitation was the least they deserved. Some freelance ninja and members of smaller factions were intrigued. The Shinobi sect might not be large yet, but it was strong and clearly had potential. A few Rain ninja wondered whether they might disguise themselves and check it out. On the rest day, Roshi woke early. He bought breakfast from a nearby stall and walked toward the training ground, eating as he went. Roshi, it's a rest day. No class, Four Tails reminded him. I know. Didn't Sosuke say that? I just can't sit still to eat. Walking helps digestion, Roshi replied without changing his expression. Four Tails smiled but said nothing. Without classes, Roshi wandered Six Path City, but he grew quickly bored. He'd already explored the place on his first day, and much of the city resembled Iwagakure. Eventually, he remembered Mu Yue's remark about Shinobi sect activities and followed the signs to the site. At a fork, there were two placards. One read, Recruiting Ninja. The other, Learn About the Shinobi Sect. Roshi didn't hesitate. He headed for the Learn About the Shinobi Sect path. He had no intention of joining another organization. The consequences would be disastrous for everyone. As the Four Tails Jinchuriki, he was a coveted asset. Any group that took him in would affect the ninja world's balance. If his presence was publicly revealed in a small organization, that group would be doomed. Beyond that, Roshi didn't want to relive the hard life he'd had before. Even after victories, people distrusted him, and he returned to suspicion and surveillance. The path led to a large classroom. A Shinobi sect ninja approached and handed him a slim, unadorned volume. If you have questions, we'll be in the cubicles over there to explain, the ninja said, pointing to another door inside the room. Roshi took a seat and opened the book. It looked less like a book and more like a tidy stack of documents. The plain cover bore only the title, Shinobi Sect and Peace. He flipped to the first chapter, expecting the usual hagiography, praise for the Six-Path Sage and the ancient Shinobi sect to justify the current organization. But the chapter surprised him. Written by Sosuke, the text did not blindly extol the past. Instead, it acknowledged the ancient sect's goal of peace while pointing out its shortcomings. Roshi's interest piqued. He settled in and read on. 605. Destroy the Ninja Clan. Ninjas can actually write books like this. Roshi shut the book halfway through and looked up, surprised. He was a shinobi himself, so he wasn't about to look down on other ninja. If anything, he understood why so few ninjas ever produced works like this. Training dominates the life of a shinobi. When they're young, they hone their bodies and skills. Even in middle age and old age, they usually study more ninja techniques, not philosophy or history. Practical power is what saves you on the battlefield. You can't expect to convert an enemy with words in the middle of a fight. Thinking of Sosuke's face only made Roshi more curious. The man looked young, no more than 30, but somehow had both deep learning and terrifying strength. Four Tails muttered that he suspected Sosuke and the Sage of Six Paths shared much in common. Roshi imagined Hagoromo would have been pleased to see this book. A shinobi philosophy genuinely aimed at peace. Roshi kept reading until he finished the whole thing, and then sat in silence, turning it over in his hands. He didn't have a broad education. Much of the text was unfamiliar. Even so, he could feel the novelty of the shinobi sect's doctrine. He'd never seen an organization quite like it. Plenty of ninja groups, some even in the 5 great shinobi villages, claimed to pursue peace, but few actually lived it. Given the current strength of the shinobi sect, they couldn't realistically plunge into a shinobi world war. Yet the determination in the book was unmistakable. If Sosuke only wanted a powerful force, he could have built one through sheer strength and recruitment. Instead, he'd created something with a distinct mission. Roshi closed the book and walked up to the Shinobi sect ninja who'd handed it to him. "Can I buy this?" he asked. He had questions, and if he wasn't going to meet Sosuke soon, he would have insisted on an explanation. But who better to explain it than the author? "No need to buy it. Take it," the sect ninja said with a polite smile. Roshi accepted the book and headed back to the inn, already wishing he could speed time until the lecture began. Sosuke's ideas had grabbed him far more than any demonstration of power could. Konoha, Root Headquarters. Danzo slammed his fist on the desk when he read the reports coming in from Root agents in the Land of Rain. "A bunch of useless fools. Can't even investigate properly," he muttered. Root had gathered some intelligence, but nothing about the Ninshu heritage. Whatever Uchiha Madara could uncover, Danzo's Root could not. How could he trust cooperating with someone who knew more than his own spies? The Shinobi sect was strengthening ties with the Rain Village and getting closer to Iwagakure. Their growing threat to Konoha left him uneasy. He rose to go to the Hokage's office, but stopped. He knew Hiruzen too well. Hiruzen wouldn't authorize an attack on the Shinobi sect unless Iwagakure and the sect agreed to act together. Danzo felt trapped. His loyalty was to Konoha, but he lacked the ability to protect the village openly. Hiruzen might stand in the light and choose inaction, but Danzo, the darkness of Konoha, could not. Just then the office door opened. Danzo wanted to scold whoever barged in, but fell silent when he saw who entered. "Danzo, you're disappointing. So much time has passed, and you've done almost nothing," the black-robed, masked man said bluntly. Danzo's face darkened. "How do you know what I've done?" he snapped, hiding his displeasure. The masked man smiled faintly. "You sent people to Six Path City to collect intelligence. You could have told me. I can give you whatever intelligence on the Shinobi sect you need." He tossed a scroll onto Danzo's desk. "Follow the plan on this. I'll help you." "If you refuse, our cooperation ends," the masked man added, then left without allowing Danzo to respond. Danzo watched his retreating back, white with anger. He'd never been treated this way, not even by Hiruzen. He fumed, then turned to the scroll. Cautious as ever, he created a shadow, clone to open it. Once satisfied, there were no traps, he read. The plan wasn't as brilliant as he'd hoped. "Jointly encircle and kill Sosuke with Rain Village," it said. It required Root's full participation. Danzo's own earlier plan had been to use Rain as the spearhead. The twist here was the masked man's demand that Danzo himself pressure Hanzo into an alliance and threaten war if necessary. Politically, that was explosive. No Hokage would unilaterally threaten a sovereign village with war. If the move leaked, Hiruzen would likely disband Root and strip Danzo of his position. Then Danzo read the line that made him hesitate. "Complete the alliance with Rain Village, and before the encirclement and killing of Sosuke, you will be given wood release." That was the masked man's offer. Wood release early, before the operation began. Danzo did not trust easily. He would suspect even a spy who freely joined Root of foul play. But the offer being made before the operation suggested sincerity. If the masked man only promised wood release after success, Danzo would never risk so much for nothing. Providing it early raised the likelihood the masked man truly wanted Sosuke dead and was willing to put power on the table to ensure it. "We cannot let the Land of Rain keep growing stronger," Danzo said to himself, glancing at the Root field reports on his desk. For Konoha's safety, he had to act. If the plan succeeded, Rain's forces would be cut down and the Shinobi sect eliminated. Konoha would gain the Ninshu heritage and wood release, strengthening its defense. Logically, it was a win-win. Failure seemed unlikely to him. The plan could stall at the alliance with Hanzo, or it could succeed. With Root and Rain cooperating and the masked man pulling strings from the shadows, how could they not eliminate the Shinobi sect? Besides Sosuke, there were a few dangerous individuals, Kakuzu and Nagato among them, but they weren't enough to convince him otherwise. He imagined if he were Hokage, he wouldn't have to go through this. He could just dispatch Jiraiya and Orochimaru with a 1,000-man force and sweep the sect away. But he wasn't Hokage. He was Danzo, and in the darkness, he would do what the light would not. 6-6. The course ends Six-Path City, Land of Rain. Early morning. Sasori woke on time, brushed his teeth and washed his face, then opened his door to head to the Shinobi sect dining hall for breakfast. Standing under a large tree 10 meters away was Nagato. He nodded when Sasori came out, and the two walked toward the dining hall together. "You don't even live here. Why do you come by every day? You don't need to supervise me. I'll still finish my tasks. I want my freedom back sooner," Sasori grumbled as they walked. Ever since the day he skipped breakfast and work, Nagato had waited at his door each morning to eat together. When Sasori hadn't yet fixed his body clock, Nagato would even knock to wake him. It annoyed Sasori, since childhood only his parents had managed him like that, never his grandmother. Nagato's persistent attention made Sasori twitchy, and the more Nagato stuck to it, the more Sasori worried about losing whatever little freedom he had. "It's not supervision," Nagato said, shaking his head. He wasn't trying to manage Sasori. He simply wanted him to form the habit of eating and not be lonely. Both had lost their parents early, and Nagato saw a bit of himself in Sasori. Before Yahiko and Konan, Nagato had wandered, feeling that in this vast land of rain, in the vast ninja world, there was nowhere to belong. He felt Sasori's loneliness and wanted to be someone Sasori could rely on, his Yahiko in a sense. "Then what is it? You really think you're my brother now?" Sasori mocked. Nagato looked thoughtful and asked, "When were you born?" If he couldn't be Yahiko, brother would do just as well. "November 8th XX year," Sasori answered on impulse. "No problem with the age then." Nagato nodded. "I was born September 19th XX year, the same year, only earlier." From both age and height, Nagato could pass as an older brother. Sasori stared at him, incredulous. He'd make a sarcastic remark, and Nagato would run with it. Because of similar hair color and a few centimeters, he could claim kinship. "What do you mean, no problem?" "I didn't agree," Sasori said, exasperated. "Let's go eat," Nagato said calmly. His composure irritated Sasori even more. They were the same age, so why did Nagato always seem so unruffled by his provocations, like an indulgent older brother humoring a brat? Nagato noticed Sasori zoning out and added, "We still have Sosuke-sensei's class later, so we should get there a bit early." Today was the 4th day of the unrestricted lecture series. They had attended the first 2 days. Because a lot of Sunagakure ninja had come, Mu Yue had granted Sasori a small concession. During the lectures, the sealing technique wouldn't be maintained, so Sasori could use his transformation technique to disguise himself. Sasori had considered using the chance to run. With so many ninja in Six-Path City, crowd control would be harder, and not being sealed for more than 10 days seemed like a prime escape window. But Sosuke had warned that any escape would triple his sentence. Sasori wasn't confident he could get past Nagato's sensory abilities, or Sosuke's, so he didn't want to gamble. If he failed, revenge would be impossible. He didn't reply and walked silently to the dining hall. He didn't particularly like Sosuke, but the title Ninja Master seemed earned. Although Sasori specialized in puppetry and had little interest in others' ninjutsu, he could still learn from Sosuke's lessons. After breakfast, Sasori used the transformation technique and headed to the training ground where the lecture was held. They arrived neither early nor late. Many were already gathered. Small talk filled the gaps. "Last time it was 7 days, now it's 8. Will the next be 9? Someone wondered. "Hard to say. Sosuke-sensei's lessons are high quality. He needs time to prepare. The next schedule is uncertain," another replied. Since Mu Yue hadn't arrived yet, the ninja chatted. Nagato and Sasori stood where they had for the earlier classes and waited. About 20 minutes later, Mu Yue walked toward the podium amid greeting, "Jess of Sosuke-sensei." The noisy training ground quieted instantly as everyone turned to him. Mu Yue smiled faintly, picked a few students to answer questions, then began the formal lecture. Time flew. Dusk approached before Sasori noticed. After dinner with Nagato, he went to the research lab Mu Yue had arranged and began work on puppet prosthetics. Normally he researched during the day, but lecture days forced him into evening hours. At first, thoughts of Kakashi or Nagato would surface, but soon Sasori lost himself in his work. His reasons for puppetry weren't cheerful. Chiyo had taught him to puppetry to help him cope with losing his parents. But over time, Sasori loved it. Puppets didn't die or vanish without reason. If broken, they could be repaired. Things that could endure were, to him, true art. He often forgot to eat or sleep while absorbed in research. "It's late. Wash up and go to bed," Nagato said, stepping into the lab from the adjacent training room. Pulled out of his concentration, Sasori glared. It felt like being woken from deep sleep, or having your bowl taken when you were still starving. How could he not be angry? "Tomorrow, there's still Sosuke-sensei's class, and the day after is a rest day," Nagato reminded. Sasori's fierce posture softened, but he protested. "Even if I research for 4 more hours, I can still wake up early and won't be tired." It wasn't that he loved the classes so much. He worried that if he skipped, Sosuke might rescind the transformation concession. That small privilege mattered. Without it, he couldn't make puppets on the sly. I believe you. Go," Nagato nodded. Sasori's forehead knit into his signature pattern. Nagato's perfunctory acceptance annoyed him, but he didn't press it. He snorted and left. The more Sasori considered it, the more useless a flesh-and-blood body seemed. Sleep wasted 7 or 8 hours a day. If that time could be spent on research, his efficiency would soar. He fantasized about an eternal body that didn't require sleep. Happy times are short. The last day of the second lecture series arrived sooner than Sasori expected. Mu Yue showed up 30 minutes early, not his usual 10. Time's moving fast. Class already? Some were surprised. Mu Yue's punctuality made many assume that his arrival meant the start was close. Roshi noticed fewer people on the field than usual and wondered why Sosuke had come earlier than normal. Probably because it's the last class, Four Tails suggested. They said there were only 8 days. By 15 minutes before start, most attendees had arrived. Mu Yue used the extra time to randomly select more ninja to ask questions. Generous, and a chance for more people to benefit. Those who came later were stunned to find him already on the podium. Others explained he'd deliberately come earlier that day. Hanzo watched Sosuke calmly answer questions and wondered if Sosuke's water release matched his own. He was curious, but didn't want to be picked. Publicly asking for guidance would be humiliating for him. He'd even warned Sosuke before, so he knew he wouldn't be chosen. Still, the idea of challenging Sosuke privately, using only water release, crossed his mind. If he could beat him, it would prove his level. Yet Hanzo hesitated. Defeating a fire specialist with water release wouldn't elevate him. Losing would destroy his reputation as the world's strongest water release user. Sosuke's lecture wound down. "All classes have now concluded. I hope everyone learned something," he said. "It's over again. It felt so quick, like I only arrived yesterday," someone sighed. The months without Sosuke's lectures had felt like years. These 10-plus days had flown. Roshi felt the same. Time had gone too fast, and though he wanted more, the end of the lectures meant he'd soon get to meet Sosuke. He'd traveled across the land of rain to Six Paths City and had watched and listened to learn more about this mysterious master. The more he learned, the more eager he became to meet him in person. Hanzo glanced once at Sosuke, then left, in silence. Some rain ninja noticed and followed him. Most of the attendees dispersed after the lecture. A few remained. Roshi ate near the inn, then stayed in his room reading and waiting to hear from the Shinobi sect. He expected news in about 2 days and a meeting with Sosuke in roughly a week. Sosuke deserved a short rest after such a large lecture event. "Do you have time tonight? If you do, I can take you to meet Sosuke-sensei in an hour," Nagato asked Roshi. Roshi was surprised but agreed at once. He had nothing else to do and was ready. End of chapter. At the appointed time, Roshi followed Nagato toward the Shinobi sect reception hall. He felt a tangle of excitement and nerves. This was the meeting he'd been waiting for, but he worried. He wasn't a good talker, and he didn't know how to express himself without risking a clash with Sosuke. He often grumbled inwardly about Onoki, but he knew his own temper wasn't much better. When they entered, Sosuke was already there, sitting and drinking tea. He wore a white robe and that same gentle expression Roshi had seen in class. Nagato announced, "Teacher, I brought the person," and Mu Yue Sosuke smiled and nodded before looking at Roshi. Up close, this was the first time Roshi had really faced him. He had 1,000 things he wanted to say but had no idea where to start. For a long beat, he just stood there, mind racing. Sosuke broke the silence. "Have you finished the book? Which chapter made the deepest impression?" Roshi blinked, then realized which book Sosuke meant. Yes, the part about the world after the ultimate goal is achieved, the world without discrimination or war, where everyone is equal, that left the strongest impression. He couldn't think of a more beautiful picture. To him, it was pure fairy tale. He'd been discriminated against his whole life as a Jinchuriki. Even with all his strength and the missions he'd done for Iwagakure, the villagers still looked at him through strange eyes. Erasing discrimination, let alone war, felt impossible. You think that goal is illusory? Sosuke asked. Yes, Roshi nodded. How could such a world exist when even legends like the Six-Path Sage, said to be a creator god, could maintain peace only briefly? Sosuke's expression softened. You know about walkie-talkies and televisions, right? Roshi blinked at the odd segue. Yes. If you were a ninja 500 or 1,000 years ago, could you believe that there would be iron boxes that let people speak over long distances without chakra? Sosuke asked. Roshi thought about it. In his world, walkie-talkies and televisions were ordinary, but hearing it framed that way made him realize how true it was. Just because something didn't exist before didn't mean it could never exist. The development of things always climbs upward, Sosuke continued. Just because it's distant doesn't mean it's impossible. That distance is what makes it the ultimate goal. Sosuke had never expected the Shinobi sect to single-handedly bring about that ultimate goal. If he could guide the sect to make the ninja world a little better, if he could at least nudge it toward peace, that would be enough. Hearing him describe that ideal reminded Roshi of the old tales. The Six-Path Sage wanting to create a world without war, teaching people to live together. Four Tails, watching from inside, couldn't help making the comparison. Sosuke's robes, his ideals. If he had the Rinnegan, it would almost seem like reincarnation. Roshi found himself convinced. Perhaps he was only persuading himself, but Sosuke's words resonated. Who wouldn't want such a peaceful world? Abruptly remembering his manners, Roshi stood and bowed slightly. It's impolite of me to have talked so long without introducing myself. He had hidden his true identity because of Iwagakure's relationship with the Shinobi sect. He didn't want to be exposed, but now it felt disrespectful. He released his transformation technique and, in his real voice, announced, "My name is Roshi." He braced for questions and shock. He was a Jinchuriki, the Four Tails, a weapon feared across the ninja world. Appearing here under a false name would naturally invite scrutiny, but Sosuke only smiled and nodded. Nagato likewise showed no surprise. Roshi felt awkward. He'd expected shock, alarm, anything but the calm they displayed. It was as if he had expected to brandish his strength only to be met with, "Oh, is that all? Look." He hadn't prepared for that. "I am the Four Tails," Roshi began, but Sosuke finished. "I know. The Four Tails Jinchuriki of Iwagakure." Roshi stared. Not only had Sosuke known who he was from the start, he had known calmly, without any dramatic reaction. Why hadn't Sosuke called Iwagakure? Why had he not reported a Jinchuriki appearing here? Questions crowded Roshi's head. "When I heard you wanted to see me, I already knew," Sosuke answered when Roshi asked. He had presumed that pretending ignorance would flatter Roshi, but there was no need for that. Roshi had expected secrets to be tenuous. His identity hadn't even been discovered by Iwagakure at large, so he was stunned it had been confirmed so easily. Roshi decided to be honest. "I'm no longer an Iwagakure ninja," he said. "I left." Nagato's face tightened at that. He'd been calm earlier because Sosuke had told him who Roshi was before sending him to fetch him, but Sosuke hadn't mentioned Roshi being a rogue ninja. Retirement from a village was one thing, but running away, especially a Jinchuriki, was a serious matter. Nagato glanced to Sosuke, searching his face, and when he saw no alarm, his tension eased. Sosuke admitted only that he knew Roshi's departure was connected to a defeat. Much remained unknown to him. Roshi relaxed a little. At least there was something Sosuke didn't already know. Silence fell. Roshi's thoughts were a muddled rush. Sosuke had known his identity this whole time. Had the timing of Sosuke's second unrestricted lecture been coincidence? Had the lecture distracted Iwagakure from searching for him? The pieces didn't line up clearly. "Let's stop here for today," Sosuke said at last. "If you have questions about the book or the Shinobi sect, come find me. I'll have some free time coming up." Sosuke sensed Roshi's interest. If Roshi applied, He'd likely be a good fit for the Shinobi sect, especially someone who'd lived through a tragic childhood. But Sosuke didn't push. Roshi's strength was an asset, but his identity was a risk. If Iwagakure learned the Four Tails had joined the Shinobi sect, they would try everything to reclaim him. Other great villages might covet a tailed beast too. That danger outweighed the benefit of a potential recruit. Sosuke preferred to be honest and let Roshi decide. If Roshi wanted to join, he wouldn't be refused, but Sosuke wouldn't force him either. If Roshi chose to leave the Land of Rain that night, he wouldn't be stopped. Roshi rose and then sat again when Sosuke told him to come back if he had questions. He remembered Sosuke had lectured just hours earlier to over 1,000 people. Sosuke shouldn't have wasted time on him. "I'm sorry for disturbing you," Roshi said. As obstinate as he could be with Onoki, he couldn't be rude to such a gracious man. Sosuke waved it off. For him, Roshi paying attention in class was already helpful. Back at his inn, Roshi lay on the bed replaying the meeting. The biggest mystery nagged at him. Why hadn't Sosuke contacted Iwagakure? Logically, if Sosuke knew a Jinchuriki had shown up, he would have at least informed Iwagakure, given their cooperative ties. Then an idea struck him. Sosuke had said he didn't know why Roshi left Iwagakure, not that he hadn't known Roshi had left. Maybe Sosuke had already put together the situation from other clues. His early knowledge of Roshi's identity and something overheard about Iwagakure's activities in the Land of Rain. Maybe the timing of Sosuke's unrestricted lecture had indeed distracted Iwagakure. It made sense, but it was still speculation. Roshi decided to stay one more day and ask directly. Originally, he'd planned to leave immediately for the bird country, but too many unanswered questions kept him here. He felt a strange confidence in Sosuke. He believed Sosuke wouldn't betray him. Meanwhile, in Rain Ninja Village, Hanzo had barely returned when news made his brow knot. "A ninja from Danzo Shimura wants to see me?" The name now filled him with irritation. "Tell him I'm tired from travel and resting," Hanzo said. He would meet the messenger. After all, the Fire Shadow's assistant represented Konoha, but he wasn't about to be rushed just to give Danzo face. Danzo hadn't come himself. There was no reason to treat his envoy as an emergency. 608. Danzo in action. After making Danzo Shimura's subordinate wait for more than a day and ignoring repeated requests for an audience, Hanzo only relented when a rain ninja finally escorted the root operative into his office. Hanzo sat back in his chair and sized up the man with a cold, hard stare. "I hope what you have to say is worth my time," he said. If the root agent hadn't kept insisting the matter was of the utmost importance, insisting only Hanzo, the Rain Village leader, could decide, Hanzo wouldn't have bothered to see him in person. Hanzo had subordinates. Matters could be delegated. The root ninja felt the chill of that gaze and involuntarily tightened his breathing. "Hanzo, this concerns the survival of the Rain Village. It won't be a waste of your time," he said, shaking off some of his nervousness and forcing his tone to become serious. "The survival of the Rain Village?" Hanzo's eyes narrowed. The Rain Village was functioning. They had not been involved in the Shinobi World War. Where could such a dire threat possibly be coming from? The root operative bristled under Hanzo's scrutiny but pushed on. This was why he'd been sent. "Yes, it's also an opportunity for you and the Rain Village, an opportunity to take out an enemy." "An enemy?" Hanzo frowned. The root's next words were like bait. "You mean to wipe out the Shinobi sect, to kill that Sosuke who ruined your reputation?" Before the failed scheme to corner Sosuke, Hanzo had been considered one of the world's premier shinobi. But after his defeat and his attempt to lure and ambush the Shinobi sect in the name of cooperation, his reputation had cracked. Wherever Hanzo's name was mentioned now, people no longer spoke of a half-divine conqueror of the ninja world. They mentioned the one who was bested by Sosuke, who could counter water release with fire release. The root ninja assumed Hanzo must hate Sosuke. Hanzo's reaction was not a verbal denial, but an onslaught of aura. His chakra erupted with a terrifying intensity, killing intent like a physical force. The root ninja went rigid, his face paling as a cold ran from feet to skull. In that instant, he knew exactly who he was facing. The demigod Hanzo, the famous rain ninja, who had once unnerved even the 5 great shinobi villages. Hanzo's eyes cut like a blade. You dare ask me to do Danzo Shimura's work? First Danzo, then the Shinobi sect, and Sosuke. What does Danzo take me for? Hanzo had no illusions. He might not be able to match Sosuke in overall power. Maybe Sosuke's water release could rival his fire. But Sosuke's strength, combined with allies like Nagato and Kakuzu, put the Shinobi sect on a level the Rain Village simply couldn't meet. The Rain Village lacked the high-end fighters and didn't have the deep reserve of mid-tier shinobi the five great nations had. If the Rain Village attacked the Shinobi sect now, they would probably lose, and the Land of Rain might suffer even if the Shinobi sect paid a heavy price in return. With the current imbalance in upper-tier combatants, a war between the two would be disastrous on both sides. My grievances with Sosuke and the quarrels between the Rain Village and the Shinobi sect are internal matters of the Land of Rain, Hanzo said, letting his aura fall back as if the pressure had never been there. There's no need to drag Konoha into this. He was also mindful that Konoha was powerful now. Provoking them would be foolhardy. Otherwise, he admitted, he might have been tempted to kill the root ninja then and there. The man had sauntered in, claiming a life-or-death crisis, then immediately proposed assassinating Sosuke and eliminating the Shinobi sect, on Danzo's orders, no less. The root ninja gnashed his teeth at Hanzo's indifference. Danzo had commanded him to recruit Hanzo into a plot to encircle and kill Sosuke at all costs. Hanzo, it's not as simple as you think, he insisted. This time Konoha will also send forces to help you. I've caught a cold and need to rest. We'll talk another day, Hanzo cut him off smoothly. The root stared at Hanzo, in disbelief. The claim of a cold did not match the man's solid voice. Before he could gather his rebuttal, Rainambu had already moved in to escort him from the office. Hanzo himself stood, left the room, and returned home nonchalantly. Danzo Shimura, what are you trying to do? Hanzo mused as he tried to read in his study, but his mind kept returning to the root's visit. He could not fathom why Danzo wanted to rally the Rain Village into murdering Sosuke and destroying the Shinobi sect. Previously, Danzo had used a plausible pretext, asking Hanzo to help mediate a dispute between Iwakure and Konoha, and then had opportunistically involved the Shinobi sect. The earlier story had been well constructed. Even now, Hanzo could not find glaring flaws in Danzo's logic. But that pretext no longer held. Konoha no longer needed mediation, having gained the upper hand in the war with Iwakure and recently annihilated many Iwakure shinobi. Hanzo also now knew the Shinobi sect was genuinely peace-seeking, not a troublemaking front. What did Danzo hope to gain? Hanzo sighed and set his book aside. The Rain Village did, however, have reason to be wary of the Shinobi sect. Two shinobi organizations could not peacefully share the Land of Rain forever. The current cooperation existed largely because of the chaos. Both had a common interest in protecting the land, and that hid many underlying conflicts. When the turmoil settled after the wars, those issues would resurface. Perhaps the Shinobi sect and the Rain Village were always destined to clash, but not yet. When Roshi woke, he didn't hurry straight to Sosuke. He waited until after 2 in the afternoon. It wasn't that he assumed Sosuke would be free all day. He merely thought Sosuke wouldn't be busy that entire afternoon. Roshi didn't want to disturb the leader's work, so he came in the afternoon. He judged correctly. As he arrived at the Shinobi sect, Mu Yue was still discussing plans with Kakuzu. I don't think we should rush into setting up a ninja school right now, Kakuzu said, shaking his head. We still have too few shinobi. Even after taking in new members, we only have just over 200. A proper ninja school would require pulling dozens away from essential duties, and that would slow our other work. Training takes time and eats up manpower we need for development. Mu Yue listened before answering with his own plan. If we must start education, we can hire ordinary teachers for the academic subjects and limit student numbers tightly. Many of the theoretical subjects, language, math, history, don't require ninja instructors. Clerical work could be handled by civilians too. Kakuzu considered it and admitted Sosuke's plan might work. He'd never been a teacher. His notion that ninja had to be teachers came from habit. In truth, using a few civilians for non-ninja roles would save precious shinobi for frontline development. And we should plan ordinary schools as well, Mu Yue added. He understood deeply that education couldn't be neglected Real change would need more than one person. They were finishing up when someone knocked on the office door. "Come in," Mu Yue said. "Teacher Sosuke, Baichuan is here to see you," a Shinobi sect member announced. "Let him in," Mu Yue replied. Baichuan was actually Roshi. He couldn't use his real name openly in the Land of Rain. To make Roshi's movements smoother, Mu Yue had quietly told the sect to allow him access to non-critical areas. Roshi entered to find Kakuzu still sitting with a cup of tea. Roshi immediately tried to be polite. "If you're busy, I can come back later." "It's all arranged. Let me introduce you properly. This is Kakuzu, head of our military and finance departments," Mu Yue said with a smile. Roshi had heard of Kakuzu, but had never met him. "I'm Roshi," he corrected Mu Yue's intended alias for him, a former Iwagakure shinobi, probably considered rogue. There was no point hiding his identity from the shinobi sect's leadership. Sosuke and Nagato already knew who he was. If the sect intended to harm him, Iwagakure would have spirited him away long ago. Kakuzu raised an eyebrow. "Four Tails Jinchuriki?" he said, surprised. He hadn't known Roshi's secret. "You defected?" "It depends on your definition. If being a rogue means your village formally declares you so, then I haven't been officially labeled yet," Roshi answered. He didn't expect to be declared rogue anytime soon. It was more useful for Iwagakure to leave that ambiguity and obscure how much they'd lost. Kakuzu snorted. "Rogue status needs a story. Some are pushed out, some leave from their own wrongdoing. Not being labeled just means the village hasn't made up its mind, or hasn't wanted to push you into despair." Roshi agreed. His case was complicated. He'd run, but not entirely cleanly. After a few sentences, Kakuzu glanced at Mu Yue. A direct visit to their leader meant Sosuke had given prior instructions. Kakuzu then turned back to Roshi and asked, "I heard Awagakure took a heavy loss recently. Did they pin that on you?" Roshi sighed. "Partly, yes," he admitted, thinking of what had met him on his return. "Partly," Kakuzu repeated, considering. "So the village meant it as a warning, not to throw you away. That's worse than what I went through." Roshi blinked. "You?" Kakuzu leaned back and told his story plainly. "I'm a rogue, too, originally from the Hidden Waterfall village. Long ago, they sent me alone to the Land of Fire to assassinate the first Hokage, Senju Hashirama." Roshi's expression changed. Attempting to kill Senju Hashirama, that wasn't a mission. That was a suicide run. Senju Hashirama's name meant the strongest of the era, a legend, the so-called ninja god. "I tried," Kakuzu went on. "Hashirama was incredibly strong. My attempt failed. I barely escaped back. My village punished and imprisoned me for failing such a critical mission. Then I became a rogue." Roshi found himself reassessing Kakuzu. To have gone toe-to-toe with Hashirama and survived was astonishing. For an impossible mission, the village's response, imprisonment and abandonment, was crueler than a swift execution. Kakuzu's later actions had been decisive. He made them pay for what they'd done to him and came out better for it. "Don't look so surprised," Kakuzu said, setting down his cup. "I got what I deserved from them. Now, my life's better than ever." Roshi's curiosity couldn't be contained. "How did you end up joining the Shinobi sect?" he asked. If Kakuzu had suffered like that, why join another organization at all? Kakuzu smiled faintly, but said nothing at that moment, leaving Roshi to sense more story beneath the surface. Chapter 609, Konoha wipes out the ninja clan? Danzo Shimura's reaction had been more extreme than Hanzo expected. Hanzo had assumed that his own attitude toward Root would be enough to deter Danzo. Instead, Danzo didn't retreat. He came in person to the Land of Rain. "Hanzo, Assistant Danzo Shimura requests an audience," an Ambu of the Rain Village reported. Hanzo frowned. Danzo's personal arrival was unusual. He'd only kept Root waiting a few days. For someone of Danzo's rank to travel here himself was abnormal. "Bring him in," Hanzo said. Danzo Shimura was the Fire Shadow's right hand and Konoha's representative. Though Hanzo felt irritation at the mention of his name, he could not treat him like any ordinary jonin. The Ambu bowed and left, returning quickly with Danzo. After he entered, the Ambu slipped out and closed the door. Hanzo watched Danzo with a blank face. Danzo looked grim, his one visible eye, the other hidden by bandages, coldly studied Hanzo. Irritation passed between them both. Danzo's secret operation, the ambush and killing of Sosuke to seize the Rinnegan, had been kept from Hiruzen Sarutobi. The longer Danzo acted, the greater the chance Hiruzen would discover him. He had intended to wait until the ambush was near at hand, but Hanzo's stance had forced his hand. "What brings Assistant Danzo to the Rain Village?" Hanzo asked, tone neutral but guarded. Danzo was, after all, the assistant to the Fire Shadow. Hanzo could not openly defy him unless he was ready to start a war with Konoha. Danzo's expression softened. "I'm here to help you, Hanzo." In his own mind, he was honestly helping. If he'd been Hanzo, he reasoned, the Shinobi sect would never have survived its travels in the Land of Rain. All that had happened since Sosuke arrived was that Sosuke's followers grew and his reputation spread. Hanzo regarded him warily. Help him? To hasten his death, perhaps? "The Rain Village is in danger," Danzo said. "What makes you say that?" Hanzo asked, testing. He wanted to see what Danzo was leading to. "Sosuke is ambitious," Danzo went on. "He's using every means to boost the Shinobi sect's reputation. When people now speak of the Land of Rain, they no longer think first of you or the Rain Village. They think of Ninja Master Sosuke and the Shinobi sect. If this continues, the Shinobi sect will erode the Rain Village's livelihood, siphon off commissions, and eventually replace you, turn the Rain Village into a footnote." Danzo spoke soberly and not without reason. Ninjas do not produce. Their income comes from two places: military stipends from the daimyo and paid commissions. If the Shinobi sect drew off those commissions, the Rain Village would decline. "Thank you for the warning, Danzo," Hanzo replied, putting on an air of confidence. "I'm prepared to compete with the Shinobi sect. The Rain's Shinobi will not lose to the Shinobi sect." He did not sound confident. Sosuke was younger, and he had Nagato, the greatest prodigy of the ninja world, behind him. Nagato alone would secure the Shinobi sect for decades. Danzo's eyes narrowed. Hanzo was not cooperative, but that was to be expected. He had another card to play. "Hanzo, you're honorable, but Sosuke may not play fair. The Shinobi sect has ties to Iwagakure," he said, laying down a final warning. If Hanzo refused now, Danzo would be forced to be frank. "So?" Hanzo replied. "From what I've seen, Sosuke's character isn't bad." Danzo felt the hair on his neck prickle. The Shinobi sect's reconciliation efforts had worked. The Rain's opinion of Sosuke had softened. If the Rain and the Shinobi sect united, they could become a force dangerous even to the great villages. "That's just the surface," Danzo said. "The danger isn't only the Shinobi sect's rise, it's the Land of Rain itself. Do you want the Land of Rain to relive the horrors of the last Great War?" Hanzo's chakra flared. A terrifying aura rose, papers from his desk scattering in a gust. "What do you mean?" His voice cut sharp. The Second Shinobi World War was Hanzo's deepest wound. He'd once wanted the Land of Rain to break the order of the five great nations. He overestimated his village and underestimated the others. The result was ruin. The Land of Rain devastated, the village weakened, the people demoralized. Danzo's words struck at that old pain. Danzo neither answered Hanzo's aura nor flinched. He'd earned his rank in blood and wasn't intimidated by a storm of feeling. "The Shinobi sect has crossed Konoha's bottom line," he said coldly. "Konoha must eliminate the threat. During the operation, some destruction is unavoidable." Hanzo's frown deepened. Danzo spoke as if Konoha would deploy troops imminently to wipe out the Shinobi sect. What crime had the sect committed to deserve such an extreme response? Because of Danzo's position, Hanzo instinctively heard Konoha itself behind the words. Danzo would not risk Konoha on a personal feud. "What did the Shinobi sect do?" Hanzo asked at last. He was curious. With Sosuke's character and wisdom, would he have crossed Konoha without cause? "That's Konoha's secret," Danzo said, deliberately elusive. "I can only say it involves Iwagakure." Hanzo weighed the mention of Iwa. Earlier, Iwagakure had mediated between the Shinobi sect and the Rain. Later, they remained close. If the matter entangled Iwagakure, it could truly become a conflict between great villages. Hanzo thought of the recent fighting in the grass country. Konoha and Iwa had clashed there before. If the Shinobi sect had been involved in a war between great nations, Konoha's severe stance would make sense. "But why involve my Rain village?" Hanzo asked. Danzo had spoken of threats and war, but he hadn't explained why the Rain had to help deal with the Shinobi sect. Danzo sighed and took on the tone of a reluctant peacemaker. "I know you love peace, Hanzo, and I don't wish to see the Land of Rain dragged into war either. That's why I argued and obtained a compromise. Only the ringleaders will be punished." Aside from Sosuke and Nagato, the others were misled and will be spared. The condition is that the Rain Village must help Konoha kill Sosuke. Danzo's original thought had been a more devious plan. Use Root to disguise Konoha shinobi as shinobi sect members and provoke a massacre, then frame the Rain or vice versa to force conflict and force Hanzo into an ambush. But the friendly treaty between the Rain and the shinobi sect made fake killings and masquerades risky. Simple cross-checking would expose them. He lacked the time for that kind of long con. Uchiha Madara's pressure had shortened his window. So he resorted to pressure, threaten Hanzo with Konoha's might and offer a deal. Remove Sosuke, and the Rain could avoid being a battlefield. Hanzo understood the logic, but he also saw the larger implication. Removing Sosuke and Nagato would be almost as catastrophic for the shinobi sect as annihilation. Sosuke represented its present, Nagato its future. Danzo framed it as mercy for the many, but it was also Konoha conserving its own power. Hanzo, Danzo continued, don't forget the humiliation Sosuke inflicted on you. Kill Sosuke, and people will remember the living demigod Hanzo, not Sosuke. Hanzo said nothing. True, Sosuke had from then on overshadowed him in many minds, and his defeat had stung. But Hanzo wasn't ready to lay the entire blame on Sosuke, or to let a personal grudge decide the fate of so many. His pride and his judgment would not be so simple. Without Sosuke, Danzo pressed, Konoha will not attack the Land of Rain, and civil war can be avoided. This is a rare chance for peace. Hanzo asked for time. This is serious. I need to think and confer with the other elders. Danzo's reply was almost a threat. My plan has been approved, but there are influential people who oppose it. If you delay too long, I can't guarantee what will happen. Hanzo met Danzo's gaze and said nothing. The lesson of the Second Shinobi World War had taught him how dangerous the great villages were, and Danzo had the authority to act. After Danzo left, Hanzo ceremoniously called a council of high-ranking Rain ninja, but he did not mention Sosuke. Hanzo preferred to take the weight of decisive choices on himself. That night, disguised, he slipped out of the hidden Rain village. 6:10. The inevitable battle. Hanzo left the Rain ninja village alone, without telling anyone. He had been thinking all day. Danzo Shimura's plan would indeed benefit the village. It could eliminate the shinobi sect, a dangerous rival, before they became a greater threat. But it was a benefit solely for the village. Losing a shinobi like Sosuke would be a loss for the whole Land of Rain. Sosuke could become powerful himself and elevate others with him. He commanded real prestige in the Rain ninja village. If the village openly tore up the treaty and attacked Sosuke, it would likely disillusion many of their own people. Swoosh. Hanzo released chakra and pushed his water-instant body to its limits, racing towards Six-Path City as if any delay would be catastrophic. The distance between Rain Village and Six-Path City wasn't great. One lay in the center of the Land of Rain, the other to the south. But Hanzo traveled with full force and soon recognized the town he had visited not long ago. Following the memory of his previous visit, he slipped past the shinobi sect guards and entered their garrison. Will he really be working at this hour? Hanzo wondered. He knew where Sosuke worked, not where he lived, and had no idea how to find him directly. Hattori, what made you decide to admire the moon at this hour? A familiar voice asked. Hanzo looked toward the voice and saw Sosuke standing on a flat roof, smiling. He glanced around, confirmed no one else was nearby, and dropped from the rooftop, scowling as he replied, I am not Hattori. With that disguise, aren't you? Mu Yue, Sosuke, smiled and led Hanzo into his office. Hanzo had disguised himself again, not his original appearance. He remembered the awkwardness of the earlier encounter and followed silently. So Sosuke really could see through his disguise, Hanzo thought, feeling a little relieved that it hadn't been a coincidence the first time. He had meant to test that later, but had decided against probing him too much. Sosuke was unfathomable. Sit. What brings you here so suddenly? Mu Yue asked as he settled into a wooden chair. Finding someone alone at the shinobi sect at night to see him had already made Mu Yue suspect it was serious. With the root ninja recently discovered in Six-Path City, Mu Yue first guessed the trouble pointed back to Danzo Shimura. Konoha plans to act against the shinobi sect, Hanzo said without preamble. Konoha, where did you hear that? Mu Yue's expression shifted to mild surprise. If Konoha was involved, Danzo Shimura was almost certainly behind it. Hiruzen Sarutobi's usual policy was restraint, not aggression. Danzo Shimura, the Fire Shadow's assistant. That's right. Hanzo's tone was flat. Interesting. Konoha told you this plan? They want me to help them. They want me to help them kill you. Mu Yue sighed inwardly. Danzo was not shy about recycling old schemes. So now you plan to help Konoha? Mu Yue asked, attempting to read Hanzo's intent. Hanzo's current state was complicated. Once the revered ninja demigod, he had lost stature with age. The Second Shinobi World War hadn't ended his legend, but Rain Village had been weakened. The proud Hanzo, who once challenged the 5 great shinobi villages, was now more cautious, suspicious enough to harbor murderous intent against his own people and to keep heavy protection. Mu Yue couldn't be certain Hanzo would side with him. No, I will agree to Konoha, and then do my best to kill you. Hanzo's voice was definite. Mu Yue's eyebrows rose. If Hanzo had come to inform him about Danzo, and then declared he would help Danzo kill him, Mu Yue might have suspected an impersonator, if not for confirming Hanzo's identity with an appraisal technique. Danzo Shimura certainly has malicious intent, Hanzo continued. But he's right about one thing. A clash between the Shinobi sect and Rain Village is inevitable. Rather than letting a full-scale war break out across the Land of Rain, it's better to resolve it now. Hanzo explained his plan. A small, controlled confrontation between and a few trusted individuals would settle everything without dragging the whole nation into open war. If Sosuke died, the Shinobi sect would fall, and Rain Village would remain intact, and Konoha, exposed as having struck a cooperative partner, would lose face. If Hanzo died, Rain Village would join the Shinobi sect, solving their manpower shortages and giving Konoha a new, formidable force that might make them wary. Either way, the Land of Rain's shinobi would remain within a unified structure, and the problem with Konoha could be addressed. Mu Yue regarded Hanzo thoughtfully. That explained why Hanzo had come to tell him, and yet refused to help. This battle can be avoided, Mu Yue said. One reason he had organized the recent lectures was to resolve the Rain Village issue without bloodshed, to show Rain's ninja the shinobi sect's strengths and win them over. If Rain's ninja joined the shinobi sect willingly, there would be no need for war. It can't be avoided, Hanzo said slowly, staring at him. Hanzo's pride would never permit him to raise a white flag and merge his force into Sosuke's sect. If he would surrender to survive, he wouldn't have come here at all. Alone, coming to declare war on me, truly worthy of the title demigod, Hanzo. Mu Yue stood and poured Hanzo tea. Even if what Hanzo said was true, this was, at least in the moment, the Hanzo people still respected. It shouldn't be long before it's your turn, Hanzo replied softly. He found his own boldness surprising too, to come alone and say this to Sosuke. If Sosuke harbored murderous intent, escape would be unlikely. Just Sosuke alone was a major threat, and the shinobi sect also included Kakuzu and Nagato. Then I won't disappoint you, senior. Mu Yue lifted his cup. If the facts matched Hanzo's words, Mu Yue would keep the appointment. According to Hanzo, he was aiding Danzo. The lure of Ninshu heritage and the Rinnegan would almost surely bring Danzo himself to the scene. Danzo's elimination would be a rare opportunity. Mu Yue had begrudging admiration for the thought of Danzo removing himself from the world for the greater good. Is this battle really unavoidable? Mu Yue asked again after a sip. He had no desire to kill Hanzo. If Hanzo joined the shinobi sect, Mu Yue might even make him a high-ranking official. As long as I live, it cannot be avoided. Hanzo finished his tea in one swallow. Mu Yue didn't press the matter further. Doing so might offend Hanzo. Hanzo rose and headed for the door. As he gripped the knob, he asked, almost casually, Sosuke, how is your water release? A little weaker than my fire release, I suppose. Mu Yue answered. Both were perfect-level nature transformations, but his fire release proficiency was higher, and he had mastered more powerful fire techniques. I see. Hanzo paused, said nothing more, and melted into the night. Mu Yue opened his Byakugan and watched Hanzo go. Hanzo had claimed he wouldn't help the shinobi sect and had declared war, yet Mu Yue believed Hanzo was in effect helping him. Hanzo could not really beat Mu Yue, not even in his unrevealed strength. Even if Hanzo genuinely intended to kill him, the gap between them was too great. To suppress water with fire, anyone with a basic grasp of nature transformation would understand what that implied. Hanzo was, in Mu Yue's view, determined to die. As a modern transmigrator, Mu Yue found Hanzo's resolve puzzling. He could solve the problem by living, but he insisted on risking everything. Mu Yue chose to respect the choice without fully understanding it. On the way back, Hanzo replayed his actions and muttered to himself, "What was I thinking, doing something so impulsive?" Coming alone to the Shinobi sect and confronting Sosuke was reckless. The latter was almost certainly fatal. He wondered whether it had been to preserve the Land of Rain's strength, to display the demeanor of a demigod, or because Sosuke's lectures had somehow influenced him. He even suspected he'd been subtly manipulated. Still, Hanzo refused to believe he had no hands. Ninjutsu wasn't everything. He had swordsmanship and poison. He might yet find a way. The next day, Hanzo refused Danzo's offer and convened a high-level meeting to arrange defenses and plans. Both sides needed time. 5 days later, seeing Danzo grow impatient, Hanzo finally replied, "Rain Village can assist Konoha in dealing with the Shinobi sect." Danzo remained outwardly composed but inwardly exultant. His trip to the Land of Rain had paid off. He could almost see Wood Release, the Ninshu heritage, and the Rinnegan within reach. "A wise decision, Hanzo. You still prefer peace," Danzo said lightly. Hanzo's expression remained unreadable. "We in Konoha have already planned it," Danzo continued. "Use the excuse of inviting Sosuke Nagato to an event to bring him to Rain Village, and then—" He outlined a practical encirclement. Hanzo's agreement to unlimited lectures made an invitation to Rain Village reasonable. Once Sosuke came, the plan was simply to kill him. As the conversation moved to the prospect of obtaining Wood Release, Danzo grew excited and nervous. Wood Release required Hashirama cells, normally only available in Konoha. If it's him, Danzo thought of the intelligence displayed by the figure posing as Uchiha Madara. Having Hashirama cells might not be impossible. The way Uchiha Madara moved through Root as if it were undefended infuriated Danzo. If someone could move freely inside his own Root, stealing a bit of Hashirama tissue would not be difficult. As Danzo brooded over that thought, a black and white figure silently appeared behind him. "This is—" Danzo Shimura blinked his eyes open, wakefulness creeping back like fog burning off. He had been in the room the Rain Village prepared for him to discuss Uchiha Madara, and then, without warning, he had blacked out. Instantly alert, Danzo sprang to his feet and put space between himself and the masked man who stood across the room. "What did you do to me? Is this how you treat your allies?" Danzo demanded, voice clipped. There was no doubt his unconsciousness had been engineered by the masked man. If someone could render him out cold without a sound, they could as easily kill him the same way. The masked man only smiled. "Heh, haven't I been generous? I've already given you the reward I promised, and quickly too," he said. "Have you noticed? A stronger body and the bloodline power you wanted most." Danzo closed his eyes and reached inward. Chakra thrummed differently now. He condensed it, shaping it into Wood Release chakra. With a thunderous crack, a small sapling burst from the floor and shot upward. Danzo's lips twitched into a manic smile. Because of his secret experiments with Hashirama cells, work the village had long banned, he had sacrificed everything, even abducting people from surrounding lands, to chase this power. He had cooperated with Orochimaru, spent fortunes, done things most would never condone. And now, finally, Wood Release was his. Even so, he kept his composure. He didn't laugh aloud, only his face betrayed the thrill. Along with Wood Release, his chakra reserve had increased. That change made him even more suspicious of the masked man. Years of research into Hashirama cells had not been for nothing. Whoever had given him this gift must have used Hashirama's cells, moreover, a highly successful transplantation method. But there had to be limits to it, otherwise the masked man would simply bring his own Wood Release force to the Shinobi sect, instead of needing Danzo's help to corner Sosuke or seize the Rinnegan. The masked man's need for cooperation implied the masked man lacked something Danzo had. This reward is mine by rights, but you should have discussed it with me first," Danzo snapped. Despite what he had been given, the memory of lying helpless on an operating table filled him with cold dread. If the surgery went wrong, or if the masked man decided to kill him in the middle of it, What would become of Konoha without him? Heh heh, that's not for you to decide, the masked man replied breezily. To him, Danzo was a tool. Tools were not entitled to answers. Danzo's face grew darker. If he could ever unmask the masked man's organization, he would exact revenge for every slight. All right then, at least tell me your deployment. How many forces will you bring to kill Sosuke? Danzo pushed. The earlier complaints had merely led into his real concern. He needed to know the scale of the operation. You'll know when the time comes. Besides, I already made you stronger. Maybe you can kill Sosuke yourself, the masked man said evasively. Danzo's frown deepened. The masked man treated him like a subordinate, giving orders and withholding information, just as Danzo sometimes did with Root, but he could not walk away now. He had wood release, but the Shinobi sect heritage and the Rinnegan remained out of reach. The encirclement was set in motion. Hanzo of the Rain had been convinced, and the Shinobi sect and Rinnegan were poised to walk into the trap. Danzo was not about to let those prizes slip. Then, unexpectedly, the masked man asked, "You've asked me a lot. Now it's my turn. What does it feel like to need to defecate?" Danzo blinked in stunned silence. The question was absurd. The masked man's sly demeanor suggested this was some kind of deliberate provocation, an attempt to throw him off. He kept his silence, narrowing his eyes as the masked man withdrew. Hiding himself so deeply, what were they really after? Danzo watched the masked man leave and let his mind work through possibilities. The masked man's pursuit of the Rinnegan and the Shinobi sect heritage could not be the whole story. Danzo had not chased Hashirama cells merely to wield wood release. His aim had been to strengthen Konoha, to give himself a path to become Hokage. The masked man's methods and knowledge made him a far greater threat than the Shinobi sect itself. He had seemed to be everywhere, knowing when Danzo had gone to the Land of Rain, sensing when Hanzo had been turned. Danzo did not believe an invisible ninja was tailing him. The more reasonable explanation was that the Rain Village harbored the masked man's agents, and the Shinobi sect likely did as well. I have to rearrange things, Danzo decided. The current plan might be enough to kill Sosuke and Nagato, but if the masked man betrayed him afterward, everything would be in doubt. Danzo found a plausible pretext. He needed to return to Konoha. The encirclement required a month of preparation. Hanzo and Danzo had agreed on that timeline, and Danzo could not remain in the Land of Rain for the whole month without raising suspicion in Konoha. It wasn't that he couldn't be away, but he needed a believable reason to go. If he claimed he was leading troops in a campaign, no one would blink if he stayed away for months, so he left. After Danzo disappeared from view, the masked man vanished into the earth and reappeared in a hidden grove. Black Zetsu waited there, his voice thin and questioning. "Did you tell Danzo everything I told you to say?" Toby shrugged off his black robe. "Mission accomplished perfectly," he said with a touch of pride. "Only regret is that he still didn't answer my question about what it feels like to defecate." As a being who didn't need such things, Toby was genuinely curious. "Ask next time," Black Zetsu replied coolly. It was a strange question to pose in the name of Uchiha Madara, but Madara was old and near death. It probably mattered little to him. Black Zetsu considered the surgery's results. Using Hashirama cells together with Toby's tissue would amplify the effect. Toby was no ordinary white Zetsu. He possessed unusual strength and could possess other shinobi to boost their physical power. He was Kaguya's most exceptional white Zetsu weapon. Employing Toby's body in Danzo's surgery had maximized the enhancement, though at a cost to Toby himself. Black Zetsu had decided it was worthwhile. Toby's injuries would heal, and using him to strengthen Danzo was better than sending Toby into the field. In a straight fight, even Black Zetsu could not easily overcome Toby. If they kill each other, Black Zetsu mused, then I can trigger the other arrangements early. Danzo dying would shake Konoha to its core. If, after Danzo's death, Black Zetsu set the other plans in motion against the other villages, Hayate Mugetsu would be too distracted to protect his students. Once Hanzo left, Mu Yue made a shadow clone and then teleported away with Flying Thunder God, heading straight for Konoha. Except for those disciples whose trust was absolute, Mu Yue always investigated before he trusted. The shinobi world was full of treachery. After all he'd endured, he would not risk everything on a hunch. Even though he suspected Danzo of scheming, Mu Yue needed to confirm it himself. From the outside, Mu Yue had always appeared to remain in Konoha. His Yangtze shadow clone had done much of his work there. Approaching the village, he flashed into his bedroom in the main district using Flying Thunder God. Immediately, he expanded his Kenbun Shokuhaki at full strength, sweeping Konoha with it. As I thought, he's not here, Mu Yue murmured. He could not sense Danzo's chakra in the village. Slipping to the root base, he activated his Byakugan and took stock. Danzo was absent, and there were far fewer root operatives than usual. Everything pointed to Danzo being in the Land of Rain, and Hanzo's arrival was the result of Danzo's machinations. There was no major war demanding Danzo's personal presence. He was not the type to go to the front lines without cause. The most reasonable conclusion was that Danzo had orchestrated this. Mu Yue weighed his options. He could report Danzo to Hiruzen Sarutobi and let the Hokage handle it, which would force Danzo back into hiding, but that would leave Danzo alive and dangerous. In Mu Yue's view, Danzo had become a more harmful presence than a helpful one, an unpredictable bomb who couldn't be trusted. He decided that, difficult as it might be, Danzo had to be eliminated. For several days, Mu Yue stayed in Konoha, probing deeper into Danzo's plans. Killing a powerhouse like Sosuke wasn't a casual matter. Mu Yue wasn't in a hurry. If Danzo wanted Sosuke dead, the initiative belonged to Mu Yue. He dug through mission reports and route submissions, but found nothing conclusive, only the usual intelligence. The one thread he could trace was Danzo's obsession with the Shinobi sect heritage. Just as Mu Yue prepared to return to the Land of Rain, Danzo reappeared in Konoha. Mu Yue's daily habit of sweeping the village with Kenbun Shokuhaki had saved him from missing it. Danzo's chakra was different, stronger, denser, as if someone who had once stood 1.7 meters tall had suddenly grown to 2 meters. Because Mu Yue had watched Danzo's chakra for so long, the change was unmistakable. Concealed, Mu Yue extended his Byakugan to the outer limit of its range and appraised Danzo with clinical precision. 612. Konoha has a promising future. Named Danzo Shimura, Chakra, 14,6000 skills, Wind Release Chakra, Nature Transformation, Mastery, 6100 1/5000, Wind Release Vacuum Wave, Mastery, 2900 15,000, Wood Release, Proficiency, 1200 3000, Potential, SS, Basic Talent, plus 6 Paths Bloodline. Mu Yue frowned as he studied the appraisal data. Danzo Shimura's stats had jumped across the board. Chakra, skills, potential, all had increased. The chakra spike alone, a jump of tens of thousands, was not something ordinary training produced. What caught Mu Yue's attention most was the sudden appearance of wood release and the marked rise in potential. Those changes fit the signature effects of Hashirama cells, boosted vitality from sage body and wood release as a built-in power. Danzo shouldn't have been able to transplant Hashirama cells at this point. Even if he had access to the cells, this level of enhancement so quickly didn't look like a normal transplant. There were only 2 plausible routes in the current ninja world: cooperation with Orochimaru, who had been conducting Hashirama cell experiments, or the involvement of Uchiha Madara and Black Zetsu. In the original timeline, Orochimaru and Danzo's research hadn't progressed far enough for a successful transplant. Such surgeries were often fatal, and Yamato was the only known survivor. But the transmigrator's presence, Mu Yue himself, had already altered events significantly, so he couldn't assume their progress matched the original. Still, Mu Yue ruled out Orochimaru's cooperation. Danzo's cautious nature made it unlikely he would be the first to try such a risky procedure on himself, and the scale of change suggested something more than a standard transplant. That left only one conclusion. Madara and Black Zetsu? Mu Yue tapped the desk, thinking. If they were behind this, everything made sense. They had the deepest study of Hashirama cells now, and their motives were obvious. If Danzo killed Sosuke, they wouldn't have to take other risks to eliminate him. Deceiving Nagato would be easier. If Danzo failed and died, Konoha would be destabilized and other villages would exploit the chaos. If both Danzo and Sosuke fell, it would be a windfall for Madara. Either outcome would serve their ends. Perhaps they intended to draw Mu Yue into their scheme as well. They didn't know his true identity, and Danzo was legally Mu Yue's secret superior, a useful pawn for Madara, regardless of whether he lived or died. Mu Yue decided to watch and wait. He wasn't afraid of being targeted. He had many resources now. The more covert Madara acted, the more his weakness showed. If Madara still had the strength to fight, Mu Yue could meet him head-on. Otherwise, elaborate plotting would expose his limitations. Still, Mu Yue worried for his disciples. Obito and the others were talented, but not yet ready to handle a battle against such schemers. Meanwhile, outside Konoha in a secluded area, Danzo Shimura practiced wood release. Wood release, world of trees advent. He intoned, shaping hand signs. He condensed chakra into wood release and forced a dozen or so saplings to burst forth, each one rapidly growing into a leafy tree. It was an impressive display, but far short of what Hashirama could do. A single world of trees advent could spawn a forest of thousands. Danzo's face showed disappointment. This was to be expected, he reminded himself. Hashirama had not been born a god either. He trained relentlessly to become the strongest. Danzo had only recently gained wood release. A setback like this was nothing. He pulled out the wood release scroll left by Hashirama and began reading. One reason he had returned to Konoha was access to their wealth of wood release records. Even a month's focused training could yield meaningful progress for someone at his level. He shifted to simpler techniques. Wood release, wood clone. Wood release, wood locking wall. Wood release, silent killing binding technique. Hours later, looking at the scorch and gouge marks where wood chakra had torn through, Danzo allowed himself a smile. It had been a while since training had felt this satisfying. Between official duties and a plateau in his capability, practice had been rare. Now he cleared away the traces. He didn't dare leave evidence in Konoha, and returned, quietly, to the root base before heading to the Hokage's office. He pushed open the wooden door and walked in. Hiruzen Sarutobi looked up and watched him enter. Danzo's next words would reveal how important this visit was. Hiruzen, we need to strengthen Root and the Anbu, Danzo said, placing a document on the Hokage's desk. The war with Iwagakure exposed how weak our intelligence is. Hiruzen sighed. How many times have I told you to knock? You're my assistant. Set an example. Danzo had anticipated that the proposal would meet resistance. He'd written it months ago and had kept it hidden because he expected refusal. Hiruzen skimmed the paper, shook his head, and said, it would consume too many resources. Root doesn't need such expansion. Hiruzen's real concern was deeper. He didn't want to bolster the Anbu. A stronger Anbu directly reflected on the Hokage's office. It concentrated power in a way that could upset the political balance. Hiruzen feared that if Anbu grew too powerful, the other elders and advisors would be sidelined. He asked Danzo bluntly, if I give you another squad's worth of personnel, can you promise results in 2 years? Can you match Iwagakure's spy methods? Danzo pressed on. Our losses weren't about numbers. It was technical superiority. We must improve our intelligence. But Hiruzen wasn't convinced. Intelligence work isn't simply Root and Anbu. It's a different kind of skill. Their debate went back and forth until Danzo left the office in a sour mood, the door slamming behind him. Hiruzen watched him go, amused. That Danzo. Next time, he'll owe me for the door. He shrugged, thinking of the village's future with an unexpected optimism. Konoha had a bright path ahead. Mu Yue and Minato were young, but already shouldering heavy responsibility. Beneath them were prodigies like Kakashi, Obito, and Metkai, talents who could one day fill the top ranks. The Sannin were in their prime and capable of leading. Hiruzen himself felt strong. His hair was fully black, no gray yet, and he stood at the peak of his power. With a decade of victory and development, Hiruzen believed Konoha could reclaim its former glory. Even if a Hashirama-level titan didn't reappear, the village's overall strength would surpass the others. Danzo, however, left the Hokage building with a very different outlook. Once out of earshot, his scowl dissolved into cold satisfaction. Hiruzen's dismissal had been a performance, a mask to mislead the Hokage into thinking Danzo was still trying to expand Root. In truth, obtaining wood release changed everything. He felt a surge of transcendence. With this bloodline limit, he believed he had eclipsed ordinary shinobi like Hiruzen. Once I master wood release, he thought, the fourth Hokage should be me. Orochimaru no longer seemed a suitable candidate in Danzo's eyes. He hadn't been present when Danzo had carried Konoha's burdens. Danzo convinced himself the village owed him the title. He knew he still needed more power to suppress all opposition, but he had a plan to get there. That night he returned to the root base and summoned a senior root agent. "Bring Mu Yue to me. I want to see him," Danzo ordered. His return to Konoha had three purposes: to study wood release and strengthen himself, to misdirect Hiruzen and keep his true moves hidden, and most critically, to secure Mu Yue. The secrecy around Uchiha Madara unnerved Danzo. He feared being discarded once his usefulness ended, perhaps even killed to prevent him from claiming the Ninshu heritage. Mu Yue's openness made him a potential trump card, someone to secure Danzo's safety, and if Madara's power proved less absolute than rumored, someone Danzo could maneuver against to seize the Rinnegan for himself. The Six Paths Eye was not just a relic of vast power to Danzo. It was a final piece in his quest for the Hokage's seat. 613. Disciples' Improvement. Mu Yue went to Root in secret as ordered. He knocked on Danzo Shimura's office door and only entered after Danzo granted permission. "Lord Danzo," Mu Yue greeted respectfully. Danzo inclined his head. Although Mu Yue often strode into the Hokage's office without knocking, if a Root operative failed to knock at Danzo's door, Danzo would begin to doubt their loyalty. "I have an important mission for you," Danzo said without preamble. "You're going to the Land of Rain." Mu Yue didn't press for details or timing. Instead, he asked, "What about the teaching duties the third Hokage arranged?" As Danzo's subordinate, it wasn't his place to ask too many questions. His job was to follow orders and solve problems himself. Still, Hiruzen Sarutobi might complicate the assignment, so Mu Yue brought it up. Danzo nodded. "Handle it as you normally do. This mission won't take long. When I notify you, arrange a few days off with Hiruzen." Danzo's caution showed. Mu Yue had performed well before, but he no longer openly belonged to Root, so direct contact had become less frequent. Danzo trusted few, and Mu Yue's strength made Danzo uneasy. Orochimaru, whom Danzo had worked with in the past, was even less reliable, purely self-interested and dangerous. Mu Yue understood Danzo's reluctance. He himself had no interest in the specifics, having already confirmed most of what mattered. Hanzo hadn't lied. He'd been fooled by Danzo. It wasn't Konoha as a whole moving against the Shinobi sect. It was Danzo alone. And even Danzo was merely the visible hand. Uchiha Madara and Black Zetsu lurked in the shadows. "This mission is crucial to Konoha's future," Danzo added sternly. "Treat it with the utmost seriousness." Mu Yue straightened and replied with conviction. "For Lord Danzo, for Konoha, I will complete the mission, even at the cost of my life." Danzo seemed satisfied. He asked about Yamato's progress, then waved Mu Yue away. Now that Yamato had gained wood release, his importance to Danzo had lessened, but Danzo still valued having another wood release ninja he had trained. Before leaving the root base, Danzo indulged in a brief practice of wood release in the secure facility. No non-root ninja could enter without his permission, except for that intrusion by Uchiha Madara. Even so, Danzo kept his use of wood release restrained. "This war will be our chance to make Konoha great again," he muttered to himself, a hint of excitement in his voice. When Mu Yue left Root, he went back to his home in the main district. Tonight, he didn't practice sealing techniques. Instead, he took out a notebook and wrote, turning possibilities over in his head. Danzo only needed to think about seizing the Ninshu legacy and the Rinnegan. Mu Yue, who would be robbed blind, had far more to consider. How to make Danzo die in the Land of Rain without exposing Hayate Mugetsu's identity, how to guard against Madara and Black Zetsu's manipulations, and how to handle the Shinobi sect. Fortunately, in the current ninja world, his own strength was considerable. Many problems, he thought, could be solved by force when necessary. The next day at noon, after finishing his Kenbun Shoku Haki class, Mu Yue walked to the south border forest to teach his disciples. Minato Namikaze had been sent to investigate some Iwagakure activity in the grass country, so he wasn't there to help. As his students grew stronger, they trained spread out to avoid interfering with one another. Kakashi was repeatedly slashing at earth and trees with his lightning-wreathed white-fang short sword. Obito practiced Blue Flame about 40 meters away. Rin Nohara and Melodic trained together beside the river. "Teacher Mu Yue," Kakashi called, pausing mid-motion. Mu Yue smiled and nodded at Kakashi, then returned Obito's greeting from across the clearing. He gave Kakashi a measured appraisal. Name, Kakashi Hatake Chakra, 10,180. Skills, Transparent World, Lightning Release Chakra, Nature Transformation, Mastery 1,915 15,000. Earth Release Chakra, Nature Transformation, Mastery 1, 0 Zine. Lightning Breathing, Mastery 300, One Thought Cut, Beginner 3,500. After more than a year practicing, Kakashi had finally learned One Thought Cut formally. With the Yang Seal's stored chakra, he no longer risked collapsing after a single cut in battle. Restore your chakra and execute One Thought Cut at full power, Mu Yue instructed. He needed to prepare his disciples quickly while he handled Danzo's scheme. Kakashi nodded and refined his chakra until he was at peak. He adjusted his breathing and formed the tiger seal, yin, with his hand, ring finger and pinky intertwined, the other 3 fingers straight and overlapping. Yang seal release. A surge of chakra flowed, entering his lightning breathing mode. He drew the white fang short sword, and the chakra in his palm transmuted into lightning release chakra that wrapped the blade, turning it into a purple, lightning-imbued long blade. One Thought Cut! Kakashi swung. Lightning coalesced into a flying slash. A narrow, 20-meter scar split the ground. Trees and rocks in its path were shredded. After the technique, Kakashi exhaled, steadying himself. In normal combat, he wouldn't expend that much energy. Most opponents wouldn't survive a standard One Thought Cut anyway. Mu Yue watched, then commented, "The power's enough, but it's not fast enough." In ninjutsu, where many fights rely on evasion, speed can matter more than raw power. If a strike's force overwhelms an enemy, it still needs to arrive before they can react. With power settled, speed became the critical variable. Mu Yue demonstrated One Thought Cut himself and explained the finer points, helping Kakashi refine timing and acceleration. After working with Kakashi, Mu Yue moved to Obito. He gave another appraisal. Name, Uchiha Obito, Chakra, 22,000 Skills, Flame-Breathing Chakra Mode, Fire Release Chakra Nature Transformation, Mastery, 1,715,000, Flame Breathing, Mastery, 4,200, Fire Dragon Flame Bullet, Proficient, 2,000 3,000, Blue Flame, Uninitiated, 32,100. Obito's chakra reserves were exceptional for an 11-year-old, partly due to his sharing on, partly from rigorous breathing technique training. Restore your chakra and use Blue Flame, Mu Yue said. Obito didn't need to bring Blue Flame to mastery to benefit. Even with low proficiency, it could be a powerful attack when combined with Flame Breathing mode. Obito entered Flame Breathing Chakra mode and began. Because his nature transformation level still limited him, he needed the breathing mode to support Blue Flame. A wisp of cobalt blue fire formed, but Mu Yue, watching with Transparent World and Byakugan active, pointed out the problem. You're not compressing chakra properly. Practice compressing with a standard fire release. Great Dragon Fire technique first. Compressing pre-compressed flames is a demanding control exercise. Working directly on Blue Flame would be ideal, but might overwhelm Obito's current reserves. Obito's eyes lit with understanding. "I get it, Teacher Mu Yue," he said and got to work immediately. Nearest him was Shisui. Mu Yue checked his status. Name, Uchiha Shisui Chakra, 17,000 Skills, Flame-Breathing Chakra Mode, Yin Release Chakra Nature Transformation, Mastery, 2,700 + 15,000, Fire Release Chakra Nature Transformation, Mastery, 1,650, Flame Breathing, Mastery, 2,600, Armament Hockey, Proficient, 2,600 3,000, Blue Flame, Uninitiated, 46,100. Though also a 3-tomo Uchiha, Shisui was younger and less physically developed than Obito, so his reserves were smaller. Mu Yue focused Shisui on Blue Flame and touched briefly on Armament Hockey. Shisui was close to mastery there. Further along, Metkai trained with a fierce enthusiasm. Mu Yue reviewed him next. Name, Metkai. Chakra, 14,000 Skills, Rock Breathing Chakra Mode, Yin Release Chakra, Nature Transformation, Uninitiated, 76,100, Rock Breathing, Mastery, 1,600 / 15,000, Golden Skyline, Beginner, 4,200. Guy's status read plainly. He hadn't yet reached beginner-level mastery in a nature transformation, but that didn't tell the whole story. His 8 gates chakra could only be measured when he used the gates. Mu Yue noticed Guy tearing into a tree with a claw-like hand form. "You working on your own taijutsu?" I had an idea," Guy said, eyes bright. Watching Mu Yue's nin beast, Black Feather, hunting in the forest had given him a spark. He thought he could fuse elements of Golden Skyline and Finger Gun into a claw-based taijutsu, less power-draining than Golden Skyline, which wrecked his fingers and arm when used repeatedly. If you have an idea, try it, Mu Yue encouraged. Ask if you need guidance. Some of the taijutsu Mu Yue taught would be raw material for Guy to develop further. If Guy could iterate on them, he'd widen his path as a fighter. Mu Yue spent time practicing Golden Skyline with him and refining control. He checked in with Yamato and then went to Rin Nohara, who trained by the river with Militic. By the time he finished instructing Rin, the sun had already dropped toward the western horizon, and the day's training came to an end. 614. Practice the concept. After watching Danzo Shimura for several days and seeing that the man was completely absorbed in wood release training and barely doing anything else, Mu Yue left behind a Yang Seal shadow clone to keep an eye on him and took his main body to the Shinobi sect. Once he reached Six Paths City, he dispelled the shadow clone he had stationed at the sect so its memories could flow back into him. He needed to know whether anything unusual had happened during his absence, and, especially, what was going on with Roshi. Mu Yue's main body had been watching Danzo, but he knew nothing of Uchiha Madara and Black Zetsu's movements, so he had to stay cautious. After carefully reviewing the returned memories from the Shinobi sect clone, he concluded that everything there had been normal while he'd been away. It looked as if Madara and Black Zetsu's immediate objective was simply to get rid of him. Between Danzo and Hanzo working with their men, they certainly had the means to lure and assassinate Sosuke. They didn't need to escalate further. Mu Yue's priority, then, was to get Roshi out of Six Paths City. Roshi hadn't explicitly said he wanted to join the Shinobi sect. He'd come to Mu Yue to learn about it, and had struck up a friendly rapport with Kakuzu in recent days, but whether he joined or not didn't matter. What mattered was that if Madara learned Roshi was in the Land of Rain, it could create complications, possibly even drawing ninja from Iwagakure. Even if Madara didn't yet know about Roshi, Mu Yue preferred to have Roshi keep a low profile, make it look like he was just passing through the Land of Rain. Once Mu Yue dealt with Danzo and absorbed the Rain Village's strength, the Shinobi sect would be stronger, and those problems would be easier to handle. Mu Yue called Kakuzu over. After a moment's thought, he said, "The situation in the Land of Rain has stabilized. There won't be major changes in the short term. I think we can start spreading the Shinobi sect's ideals in some small neighboring countries that don't have a ninja village. Spreading into countries with existing ninja villages would be provocative. Many would treat the Shinobi sect as a de facto village, just without the name. We should use this chance to expand abroad," Kakuzu agreed. Although the Land of Rain had only recently reached a fragile peace, the Shinobi sect would normally need to recover and consolidate. Kakuzu felt the current chaos was a rare opportunity. If the great villages stopped fighting, it would become even harder for the sect to grow. An initial outreach wouldn't cost much or destabilize the Rain. "Do you have someone in mind?" Kakuzu asked. "This is the sect's first official step beyond the Land of Rain. Whoever we send must understand our ideology deeply." He was thinking of Nagato. His knowledge of the sect's ideals and his standing as the world's top genius made him a logical choice. Yahiko might also be acceptable, given how many in the sect respected him. Mu Yue merely smiled, saying nothing. Kakuzu blinked in surprise and disbelief. He'd expected Mu Yue to name Nagato, or at least Yahiko. "Me?" Kakuzu pointed to himself. "Isn't that a little inappropriate?" Kakuzu asked. To outsiders, he was undoubtedly the sect's second-in-command, but his path to joining had been different. He'd tried to assassinate Sosuke, and only later joined after being convinced. The old incident still colored his thoughts. Could someone who'd once attempted to kill Sosuke be trusted with such responsibility? "How is it inappropriate?" Mu Yue replied, patting Kakuzu's shoulder. "You have more experience than any other Shinobi sect ninja, and your understanding of our ideology is solid. You're the best candidate." Even without the unexpected factor of Roshi, Kakuzu had the kind of wartime experience and survival skill the mission needed. Nagato might be strong, but he lacked Kakuzu's battlefield savvy, and could himself become a target for Madara. Kakuzu swallowed and forced calm into his voice. I can't promise I'll do it perfectly. His wasn't false modesty. He genuinely felt Sosuke deserved the overwhelming credit for building the Shinobi sect. If Sosuke himself led the mission, Kakuzu believed it would succeed without fail. Still, he finished. I'll do my best. Kakuzu then asked about Roshi. Earlier he'd seen Roshi come into Mu Yue's office and ask questions. He'd wondered whether Mu Yue considered recruiting Roshi. If he wants to join, the Shinobi sect would welcome him, Mu Yue answered, unchanged in his attitude. A few days later, Kakuzu set out for Bird Country, which borders the Land of Rain, accompanied by several Shinobi sect ninja and a disguised Roshi. After arranging that, Mu Yue left a shadow clone at the Shinobi sect and returned his main body to Konoha to continue keeping watch. 615. Furious Danzo, Wood Release, World of Trees Advent. Danzo Shimura formed the seals in a blur. The enormous reserve of chakra within him shifted into wood release chakra, and with a series of sharp cracks the earth all around him erupted. Trees shot up in rapid succession, trunks thickening and branches unfurling, until a small forest stood between him and the sky. Still not on par with the first, Danzo said with a smug curl of his lip as he examined the hundreds of trees encircling him, but it will be enough for Sosuke. After more than 20 days of focused training, his wood release had taken a marked leap forward. The new ability gave him a giddy confidence, not vanity, he told himself, but the simple recognition of results. Was it his own talent, or some unforeseen effect of the experiments from Uchiha Madara? That idea felt absurd. Why would Madara bother to help him? No, this was his doing. With another year of training like this, Danzo believed he could surpass Hiruzen Sarutobi even without the Ninshu heritage or the Rinnegan. Of course, he still wanted those relics. More power never hurt. After training, he returned to the root base and summoned every root operative in Konoha. The assassination date was only 6 days away. Root units from other districts had been concentrated in the Land of Rain. Only Konoha's root teams remained on standby. Lord Danzo, everyone's assembled and ready to execute the mission, a root operative reported. Danzo produced a scroll and handed it to him. Give this to Mugetsu, he instructed. It would have been safer to hand the assignment to Mugetsu right before departure, but Danzo couldn't risk last-minute surprises. This was his operation now. Nothing could be left to chance. He left the weakest recruit to guard the base, Paul, then dispatched the root in staggered groups toward the rain, while he himself stayed behind for a moment longer. Danzo intended to leave Konoha soon, but first he wanted to show himself to Hiruzen Sarutobi. They had been classmates and comrades once. Now, with his own plans underway and his future uncertain, Danzo felt it prudent to afford the Hokage some outward respect. He walked to the Hokage's office, paused, and knocked. "Come in," came Hiruzen's voice. Danzo pushed the door open. Hiruzen looked up from his papers, surprised. He had assumed the knock was some routine report. Seeing Danzo in person was unexpected. "Danzo, is something the matter? If it's about the previous issue, you don't need to worry." Hiruzen began, setting the documents aside. He always had a wary sense that Danzo's unexpected politeness hid ulterior motives. "Not at all," Danzo replied, a little put out that his courtesy was met with suspicion. "It's after hours. I wanted to see if your official duties were done. If so, I'd like to invite you for a drink." Hiruzen's surprise deepened. Danzo Shimura was famously stingy. The Hokage had never once seen him treat anyone. For ninjas, who earned well enough, inviting comrades to drink after work was common. Yet Danzo had never done so. "If your duties are nearly done, then sure, are you certain? If you don't want to drink, forget it." Danzo's face hardened slightly as he turned to leave. "Of course I'll drink," Hiruzen laughed. He couldn't refuse an invitation from Danzo. Refusing would be an insult, and Danzo's motives warranted at least a single courtesy. They did not go out. Instead, they had sake and snacks brought to Danzo's house. Hiruzen set down a skewer and smiled. "No work talk tonight," he said, picking up his cup. "Why the sudden invitation?" Danzo shrugged. He had no great reason. He simply felt like it. In the past, he had avoided treating others because he hated spending money. Today's invitation was a spontaneous whim. Seeing that Danzo really had no agenda, Hiruzen settled in, and the two fell into the old rhythms of conversation, then into argument. If our village doesn't show strength, it will be overtaken. We must assert our prestige, Danzo said bluntly. Prestige is important, Hiruzen replied, but that doesn't mean assembling an army to invade neighboring lands. They argued their differing philosophies, Danzo blunt and hawkish, Hiruzen cautious and measured. Neither yielded. At one point Danzo snorted. If our teacher hadn't sacrificed himself back then. His voice trailed. What he meant was clear. Tobirama's loss tilted politics his way. Hiruzen nodded somberly. The death of Senju Tobirama had been a grievous loss for the village and for the development of ninjutsu. For a time, the consequences had been unavoidable. The talking turned from politics to memory, and then back to their old, unresolved tension. When the bottle ran dry, Danzo rose and silently brought the evening to an end. Hiruzen laughed ruefully and departed. As his figure disappeared, Danzo reflected sourly on the cost. I wasted 800 ryo, he thought. The money would have been better spent buying something for Yamato. At least Yamato would have shown gratitude. Hiruzen's company had been more trouble than it was worth. Back at the root base, only 4 shinobi remained besides the guard, 3 waiting to leave with Danzo and the one left to hold the base. Danzo retreated to a secret chamber. This operation's too dangerous for one safeguard, he muttered, activating a hidden mechanism. He produced a small box and opened it. Inside lay a blood-red eye. He had decided to transplant a second Sharingan. Because he was no Uchiha, Danzo could not deactivate a transplanted Sharingan at will. He had already been living with one, useful as a trump card, but draining in its drawbacks. With Hashirama cells now fused into his body, chakra consumption was less of a problem. More than that, his planned struggle with Uchiha Madara over the Rinnegan could be lethal. Another layer of defense was worth it. The transplant was swift. When he opened his eyes afterward, 2 eyes now, he felt strangely invigorated. Is there some affinity between Senju cells and the Uchiha? He wondered. Previously, a single transplanted Sharingan had felt like both lifeline and handicap. It had not made him stronger in a straightforward way. Now, with the added Senju cells, a second Sharingan actually enhanced his power. Danzo hadn't expected a true boost, only greater redundancy. A root member handed him a specially made strip of cloth. Danzo took it and covered both eyes with an opaque cloth bandage. He would not reveal the Sharingan until the assassination. The eyes were his secret trump card. No one would see them until it mattered. Danzo led his men to the land of rain. Hanzo noticed Danzo's more complete eye covering. Your eyes? He asked. Minor matter, Danzo said calmly. It won't hinder the plan. Hanzo nodded and reported that Sosuke had agreed to attend the chuunin exams. Hanzo was hosting. To minimize attention, Hanzo kept it a standard chuunin exam rather than a grand joint event. Sosuke should arrive in 5 days, Hanzo said. Then the plan goes forward. Danzo had brought only about 30 Konoha shinobi with him. Hanzo raised an eyebrow. Only so few from Konoha? Sometimes a small number of elites is more effective, Danzo replied. He had sent as many as he could without alarming Hiruzen. Some of these operatives weren't even registered Konoha 9. They were pupils Danzo had trained outside the village. We don't want a Konoha-sized commotion drawing attention, Hanzo said little more. He had no intention of using Konoha as a blunt instrument to eliminate Sosuke. The plan didn't require overwhelming force. Danzo divided his time between studying wood release and refining the encirclement and assassination plan. Then, with 1 day left before Sosuke's arrival, 2 pieces of bad news came. The first was minor. His wood release progress had slowed. Perhaps he had absorbed too much knowledge at once. It was frustrating, but manageable. The second was infuriating. The report from Root informed him Mugetsu had delayed his departure. Mugetsu had been scheduled to leave right after classes and race to the rain. Given his speed, he could have arrived well before midnight and been Danzo's trump card when the fight began. Instead, Hiruzen had invited Mugetsu to dinner that evening, even planning to show him some ninjutsu. Mugetsu, polite and unwilling to refuse the Hokage, waited, and only left Konoha at 8 in the evening. Danzo stared at the message and slammed his hand down. He blew it, he snarled. Root operatives prioritized the mission above all else. No personal courtesy should interfere. Still, after a few breaths, he forced himself to calm. Mugetsu was disciplined. At that speed, he should still reach the range shortly after the conflict started. Danzo resolved to reprimand him once the dust settled. The plan, he told himself, was still under control. 616. Assassination. The Rain Village's request that Sosuke observe their chuunin exams barely raised an eyebrow within the Shinobi sect. Compared with the sect's large lecture events or the youth martial arts tournament that drew prodigies from across the ninja world, the Rain's chuunin exams were routine, hosted solely by the Rain Village, not a joint affair. Besides, the Shinobi sect could hardly field any candidates. It had only just been founded. Its ninjas' strength and experience matched their ranks. The night before the exams, Yahiko, Konan, and Nagato sat in the small pavilion at the Shinobi sect headquarters, chatting. "I've been exhausted lately," Yahiko said, stretching. "It should ease up now. Most of the work is done," Konan replied softly. Everyone in the Shinobi sect had been busy stabilizing other parts of the Land of Rain. Yahiko smiled. The work was tiring, but seeing his homeland improve made it worthwhile. "Nagato, aren't you going to the Rain Village with Ninja Master Sosuke tomorrow?" Yahiko asked suddenly. Nagato nodded. In truth, he was the only one from the Shinobi sect traveling with Mu Yue. Having already known this might be a trap, Mu Yue had no reason to bring the sect's ninjas on an unnecessary outing. He'd brought Nagato because Nagato was strong, and if something happened, Mu Yue could make a clean escape with him. "I wanted to go too," Yahiko grumbled, "but I've been so busy, I forgot to tell Ninja Master Sosuke." Yahiko hadn't wanted to attend the chuunin exams. He wanted to see Hanzo and ask questions. Hanzo had visited during the tournament and the second lecture, but Yahiko had been occupied. He wanted to know Hanzo's true feelings about the Land of Rain. Did Hanzo genuinely want peace? Iwagakure had suggested that Hanzo's past actions against the Shinobi sect were a misunderstanding, and the sect had accepted collaboration largely because it served their own recovery. Yahiko had not forgotten Hanzo's cold look the last time, nor the kunai Hanzo had once used to force Sosuke into a desperate situation. From what Yahiko knew, it seemed far more than a mere misunderstanding. Yet he also refused to reduce Hanzo to a simple, treacherous brute. Hanzo's legend and the loyalty he inspired argued otherwise. Yahiko wanted to confront him directly and find out. "Nagato, do you think it'd be bad if I went now?" Yahiko asked. "Very bad," Nagato said without hesitation. Mu Yue had warned Nagato of the dangers. Even though Hanzo had leaked information, he still had his own ambitions, and Danzo Shimura would certainly make a move to seize Nagato's Rinnegan. It was far too risky for Yahiko to come along. "All right, then we'll wait," Yahiko said, scratching his head. They were leaving the next day. It wasn't the right time. The next morning, Mu Yue and Nagato set out for the Rain Village to observe the chuunin exams. "If a fight breaks out, don't think of anything else. The most important thing is to protect yourself," Mu Yue advised en route. Uchiha Madara's faction would hold off for the moment, but Danzo Shimura would try to take Nagato's Rinnegan. "Understood," Nagato replied seriously. He trusted Mu Yue's strength and intended only to avoid becoming a liability. Of course, if Mu Yue truly needed help and Nagato could make a difference, he would act. The Rain Village lay in the center of the Land of Rain, not far from the Shinobi sect in the south. Around 11, Mu Yue and Nagato arrived near the village. Mu Yue made no attempt to hide. He walked openly down the main road with Nagato and two shadow clones of Nagato produced by the transformation technique. The party was quickly noticed. Hanzo, having been alerted, went out to meet them with rain ninjas. When Mu Yue and Nagato reached the village gate, Hanzo stood at the front. "Sosuke, you've arrived," he greeted, his tone indifferent, glancing with one eye at a masked rain ninja beside him. Mu Yue followed the glance. The masked ninja looked like any ranged shinobi, except for the strange mask with tiny eye holes, so small it seemed doubtful I served any real purpose. "Hanzo, I'm here," Mu Yue replied with a smile. He gave the masked ninja a brief appraisal. The confirmation appeared in Mu Yue's mind. Danzo Shimura. Mu Yue's inward nod was silent. Danzo was offering an opportunity. It would be rude not to respond. Danzo ignored the greeting and focused on the ninjas accompanying Sosuke. He only brought 3 ninjas. Confident, or has no one under him? Danzo thought with a private glee. With only Sosuke, Nagato, and 2 clones present, the fewer people Sosuke brought, the easier an assassination would be. A sudden, close-range attack might dispatch this so-called ninja master before a prolonged fight began. Nagato, observing through his Rinnegan, sensed the chakra in Danzo's body and frowned. Powerful chakra. An enemy? He wondered, entering a state of alert in case of attack. Danzo's gaze flicked to Nagato's shadow clones, as if checking them all over. Up close, Nagato's Rinnegan told Danzo that his own 3 Tomoe Sharingan was inferior. The third stage hasn't started yet. I'll take you to your quarters, Hanzo said, then looked to the village gate. The rain ninjas at his side parted, clearing a broad path. Hanzo deliberately slowed to walk abreast with Sosuke and led him into the village. Hanzo and Mu Yue walking side by side down the main street drew many looks. Some residents, unaware of the arrangement, wondered who this Mu Yue was to walk with their Hanzo. Mu Yue's alias was famous enough that ordinary folk had heard legends of Sosuke, but not everyone could put a face to the name. The Rain's own ninjas, however, recognized the person beside Hanzo as Sosuke, leader of the Shinobi sect. Could the village and the Shinobi sect actually be reconciling? Some thought. Both sides knew the treaty was a compromise, not an embrace. Sosuke's strength could threaten the village, while the village's numbers could curtail the sect. Many Rain ninjas disliked the arrangement. Some still respected Sosuke. Others had been persuaded by Hanzo's earlier defamation. But after Sosuke had beaten Hanzo and founded the Shinobi sect, and after he'd lectured publicly, more Rain ninjas found themselves admiring him. Some risked punishment to listen to his teachings. The reasons were straightforward. Sosuke had defeated Hanzo despite elemental disadvantages. He was a powerful figure from their country. He was charismatic and helpful, and Hanzo's repeated losses to his junior made Sosuke look like the future. A voice suddenly rang out from the crowd. "Ninja Master Sosuke! Ninja Master Sosuke!" Others echoed, and the call grew louder as more joined. Hanzo watched the scene with mixed emotions. Sosuke could be called teacher here in the village, but would anyone in the Shinobi sect call him Hanzo? Probably not, Hanzo reflected bitterly. After all, the Shinobi sect had almost been destroyed by his hands. Only Sosuke, a magnanimous man not quite like other shinobi, might still use Hanzo's name with a teasing familiarity. Danzo watched the cheering with a calculating look. He remembered Mu Yue's influence on his students, and even the respect of root operatives once trained by him. If Mu Yue began training Jonin and Chuunin directly, turning them into his followers, Danzo thought the Hokage's position might be threatened. He mused about keeping Mu Yue to instruct a few teachers instead of the masses, then his own power would remain safe. And yet, he had a chance here. Nagato looked surprised at how beloved Mu Yue was, especially considering Hanzo stood right beside him and they still dared to call him teacher. "Hanzo's here. No shouting!" a Rain Jonin snapped, stepping forward to scold. Outside the village, Sosuke's fame could not be controlled, but inside, he shouldn't be allowed to show off. The crowd quieted immediately. The man speaking was a Jonin squad leader, one of the Rain's high-ranking officers. He had the authority to enforce order. Just then, Hanzo interrupted, cool and unmistakable. "This is not a solemn occasion. No need for such." The squad leader froze, baffled. Hadn't he been speaking up for Hanzo? Why would Hanzo chastise him? Feeling wronged, he stepped silently back behind Hanzo. In the Rain village, Hanzo's authority was absolute. Even high officers were powerless before him. As they walked, Hanzo said, "This wasn't my arrangement." "I didn't think it was," Mu Yue chuckled. He didn't believe Hanzo would stage anything so crude. Hanzo had already exposed Danzo's plan to assassinate him. There was no need to manufacture more drama. They went deeper into the village, where buildings thinned and the streets grew quiet. Mu Yue's Byakugan and Transparent World were active. He wasn't worried about surprise attacks, neither from Hanzo beside him nor Danzo behind him. They reached a secluded vacant lot and a neat 2-story house that looked oddly isolated in the empty space. "Is this for my training needs?" "It's well chosen," Mu Yue said, smiling and looking around. "You can assume it is," Hanzo replied, expressionless. Hanzo's words gave Danzo the opening he wanted. Standing a few paces behind Sosuke, he tightened his grip on the kunai hidden in his sleeve and closed the distance with practiced stealth. He drew a deep breath, concentrated a surge of chakra into his arm, and then sprang, stabbing suddenly towards Sosuke's chest. "Got him!" Danzo thought exultantly, seeing in his mind the prospect of the Ninshu heritage and the Rinnegan falling into his hands. Mu Yue didn't even look back. He focused his rock breathing to reinforce his strength and defense, condensing chakra in his right index and middle fingers. Turning his body slightly, he extended his arm and, with pinpoint precision, caught the incoming kunai. Danzo Shimura's expression flickered. He hadn't expected Mu Yue's reaction to be so quick. He pushed out chakra to increase his strength and tried to force the kunai through, but the sudden surge only raised a gust of wind that ruffled Mu Yue's hair and white robe. No matter how hard Danzo shoved, the kunai didn't move a single millimeter. How can his strength be this great? Danzo grunted, driving his foot into the ground for extra leverage, but still the blade would not budge. His sneak attack had failed, yet he didn't panic. The area swarmed with his root operatives and Hanzo's men, and some Uchiha-aligned shinobi were hiding in the crowd. The mission could not fail. Seeing Danzo make his move, the root ninja who had been posing as range shinobi abandoned their cover. They drew swords or pulled kunai. Those closer to Mu Yue rushed him. Those closer to Nagato attacked Nagato. Crack! Under Mu Yue's grip, the kunai Danzo had held snapped clean in half. With a dull thud, Mu Yue slammed his fist into Danzo's abdomen and sent him flying 10 meters. Bang! 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 Mu Yue flashed through the air like lightning, throwing rapid, devastating punches at the charging root ninja and knocking them all down. Hanzo watched without surprise, calm and composed. He had expected this. Mu Yue's taijutsu exceeded even his own, and Hanzo had forewarned Danzo, so the sneaking attack could never have worked. "Hanzo, what are you waiting for?" Danzo barked furiously, glaring at Hanzo standing beside Mu Yue and doing nothing. If Hanzo had struck when Mu Yue first blocked him, they might have killed Mu Yue together. Now Danzo felt betrayed. He noticed that the true range shinobi, like Hanzo, hadn't moved either. They only watched. Waiting for the right moment to strike, Hanzo replied evenly. He had no intent to side with Danzo or to help Mu Yue. He would simply bide his time until Mu Yue had finished settling the disturbance from Konoha, and only then would he act. Danzo's face tightened. What moment was better than the present? Still, he kept his temper in check. Any rash words might push Hanzo into Mu Yue's corner. Hanzo's inaction felt like a betrayal, but Danzo would rely on himself. He had worked tirelessly to strengthen his wood release since obtaining it. He had to be able to take Mu Yue down. "I will become the second ninja god," he thought, feeling the surge of wood release chakra at his command. He was already powerful. With wood release and his elevated chakra, he refused to believe Mu Yue could best him. Wood release, world of trees advent. Danzo moved fast, forming hand seals as his root men continued their attack, unleashing a massive burst of chakra for his strongest wood release. He still couldn't summon Hashirama's legendary wood golem. His skill wasn't that developed, but under the influence of his wood chakra, countless trees exploded from the ground and grew in an instant, transforming the open space into a rapidly rising forest. Everyone present, save Mu Yue, stared in surprise. The current generation of Kage hadn't seen Senju Hashirama's era up close. They remembered the legend of the ninja god and the single, terrifying nature of his wood release. Yet here was Danzo, a Konoha official, wielding wood release. "He actually has wood release," Hanzo said, a trace of emotion in his voice. He hadn't expected Konoha to boast a second wood user, least of all Danzo. The range shinobi watched the newly grown forest with wide eyes. Danzo relished their reactions. He wished Hiruzen Sarutobi were there to see it. But there was no time for vanity. His priority was killing Mu Yue and Nagato. Under Danzo's control, trees thrust out branches and twisted trunks to seize Mu Yue and Nagato. Nagato condensed chakra in his feet and leaped up. The branches elongated, trying to drag him into the forest, but he forced out a tremendous repulsive force. "Shinra Tensei!" he cried. An overwhelming pulse of force shoved back the soaring branches, and Nagato's body shot upward beyond their reach. His two shadow clones couldn't withstand the backlash and burst into white smoke. "If you don't want to get caught in the crossfire, stay back. It'll get dangerous," Mu Yue warned, using wind release to slice apart the wooden strips reaching him. The next jutsu he planned to use would be huge in scope. He didn't want to injure any allied shinobi accidentally. At Mu Yue's warning, Hanzo immediately withdrew. The true rain ninja followed him. Since Danzo had not attacked them directly, they had little reason to stay in the forest. Hanzo had deliberately avoided dragging ordinary rain forces into this fight. He didn't want to waste the village's strength. Wood release is not simple, Hanzo mused as branches struck at Mu Yue from every angle. Danzo's wood techniques covered a wide area and could assault from all sides, making them difficult to defend against. Mu Yue quickly formed a hand seal and created a shadow clone. His main body switched breathing styles and entered flame-breathing chakra mode. He raised his right hand, extended his thumb, and tilted his index and middle fingers, bending his ring and pinky into the hand sign of the tiger. Fire release, fire dragon dance. A scorching, deep red flame blasted from Mu Yue. The wooden strips contacting it were incinerated to black ash. A sea of deep red fire swelled around him, consuming the nearby trees. The shadow clone finished condensing chakra and formed a one-handed seal of its own, extending its pinky and folding the others into the dragon sign. Wind release, vacuum hurricane. Whoosh! An enormous hurricane poured from the clone. The wind fanned the flames, and the fire around Mu Yue ballooned into a vast inferno. The combination of the main body's fire and the clone's wind turned the woodland into scorched earth. "It's so hot!" the rain shinobi gasped, bracing with chakra in their feet to avoid being blown away. Though the land of rain was usually cool and damp, now the heat felt like standing inside a giant furnace. Combination ninjutsu, twin dragon annihilation. Mu Yue and his clone pushed their chakra to the limit. A roar like twin dragons burst forth as fire and wind merged into one devastating force. The blaze expanded again, instantly transforming the entire forest into a sea of fire. The rising deep red flames and sorely increasing temperature made everyone feel as if the world itself had become a burning realm. "This can't be," Danzo stared, incredulous. How could the invincible bloodline limit of the ninja god be overcome by what amounted to a combination ninjutsu? His wood release, World of Trees advent, had altered the terrain only to be obliterated. Hanzo's mind went back to their fight in the valley. Fire Dragon Dance was a technique he would never forget. Mu Yue's power now surpassed anything Hanzo had seen before. The combined Fire Dragon Dance and Vacuum Hurricane far outshone a single Fire Dragon Dance. If Mu Yue had used this combo in their first clash, Hanzo might have died instantly. He had underestimated Mu Yue's growth. "Good thing we got out," the rain shinobi at the edge of the flames breathed, still shaken. If they had been even a moment slower, they wouldn't have survived. Those who could stand now were Hanzo's closest men. Some had once urged Hanzo to use the entire village against Mu Yue, but Hanzo had refused. Consuming the Land of Rain's strength recklessly would have been folly. Danzo, seeing the situation, prepared to escape. No one could face such a fire head-on. But Mu Yue split the inferno into 10 enormous fire dragons that blocked every escape route. Mu Yue met Danzo's glare calmly. The combination jutsu had cost him a great deal of chakra. He had not unleashed it simply to burn trees. If Danzo lacked space-time ninjutsu like Flying Thunder God or Amenoteji Kara, he could not evade this. At best, Old tried to defend. Realizing he couldn't dodge, Danzo froze, doing nothing, almost as if he had resigned himself to death. "Sosuke, wait!" Hanzo began to gather chakra, planning to save Danzo. Although he despised Danzo and would have liked to kill him, Danzo could not die here. Danzo was a high-ranking Konoha official. If Hanzo allowed Konoha's representative to be murdered, Konoha would declare the Land of Rain an enemy. Still, Hanzo was too late, not because he was slow, but because he couldn't cover the distance in time. Boom! The 10 fire dragons surged at Danzo from all directions. The combined explosion sent a column of flame into the sky, engulfing Danzo and everything nearby in deep red fire. Hanzo stopped and exhaled deeply. He didn't believe any human, even with chakra defenses, could survive an attack like that. Ordinary defensive water release couldn't hold up. This blaze could probably boil an entire lake. "It's out of control," Hanzo murmured. He had hoped Mu Yue would spare Danzo out of consideration for Konoha. He hadn't expected such ruthlessness, striking with an unprecedented, overwhelming combination from the outset, leaving no time to intercede. "What's going on? Has an enemy infiltrated?" Some rain shinobi called as they saw the commotion and dashed forward. Fire is hard to ignore. A crowd began to gather, but Hanzo's Anbu quickly formed a barrier. Hanzo's orders, no passage beyond this point, the Anbu said coldly. Hanzo had planned to limit involvement from regular rain forces. The shinobi, puzzled but obedient, held back to watch from a distance. When the smoke cleared, Danzo stood unmoved on the scorched earth, mask gone but no burns marred his body. His face was bleak, and his lone remaining 3 Tomoe Sharingan stared at Mu Yue with murderous intent. If looks could kill, Mu Yue would be cut to pieces. Mu Yue's expression remained calm. Danzo now had only 2 Sharingan left. If he chose to use one, if he relied on his trump card, Danzo would be using up one of the few lives he possessed. No text for this chapter. Let's proceed to the next chapter. No text for this chapter. Let's proceed to the next chapter. Chief, this is what Hanzo asked me to give you after the battle, the Rain Ninja Anbu said, handing Mu Yue a scroll. Mu Yue slipped the scroll into his ninja tool pouch, formed a series of hand signs, and used medical ninjutsu on Hanzo. With yang release chakra, Hanzo's wounds slowly knit together. The technique could not bring him back to life, but it made him look presentable enough. The Rain Ninja around them watched with a dawning understanding, as if Hanzo's intentions were finally making sense. Take Hanzo away and prepare his remains. Have someone clean up the traces here, Mu Yue instructed the Anbu. Then he addressed the others. I know this is a difficult time, but there are many things we must take care of. We'll have a meeting in half an hour. I expect everyone to attend. All the Rain Ninja present were not ordinary shinobi. They were Jonin-level leaders, the village's management. Yes, Sosuke. One of them replied after steadying himself. He had accompanied Hanzo to Six Path City for the second unlimited lecture and had a good impression of Sosuke. Hanzo's death hurt him, but he did not hate Sosuke. In his mind, this was an inheritance ceremony. Hanzo had appointed his successor, and Sosuke had accepted the position. No one present chose to be a troublemaker. Hanzo had prepared them ideologically, and Sosuke was a Rain shinobi who had worked toward peace in the land of Rain. Everyone had seen what the shinobi sect had done and believed they sincerely wanted prosperity for the land. Mu Yue noted their lack of hostility and nodded inwardly. In his view, these Rain Jonin were weak fighters, but one could not rule a village by slaughter alone. He had just taken control. If he started killing to consolidate power, the village would descend into chaos. Better to win their cooperation. He took Nagato and walked to the Rain Ninja office building, stopping at the wooden door of the Rain Ninja chief's private office. Pushing it open, Mu Yue glanced around. Apart from a few decorative touches of the Land of Rain, it was an ordinary office, nothing remarkable. I didn't expect it to end like this. I shouldn't have urged Yahiko last night, Nagato murmured. For the shinobi sect, the result was ideal. Mu Yue had become chief of the Rain Ninja village, and several former high-ranking officials, including Hanzo, were dead, smoothing Mu Yue's path to consolidate the Rain village's power. Before the meeting, Nagato had feared ambushes by Hanzo or Danzo Shimura. He had never expected Hanzo to concede and name a successor. What about Yahiko? Mu Yue asked as he pulled out the office chair and sat. He wanted to come with us to the Rain village to see Hanzo, Nagato explained. Even if they hadn't been able to speak, Nagato thought Yahiko would find the trip worthwhile to see Hanzo one last time. Tell him to come right away, Mu Yue said, taking the scroll back from his pouch. He could still see Hanzo's handwriting. Later, there would only be a photograph at the grave. Nagato nodded and stepped out to contact the shinobi sect. Mu Yue unfurled the scroll and read carefully. Sosuke, the first line said, by the time you see this scroll, I will already be dead. Mu Yue sighed. It occurred to him that Hanzo might have already been prepared to die when he sought out the shinobi sect, which was why he had refused the opportunities Mu Yue had offered. You need not feel anything about this, the scroll continued. I only want you to know one thing. Only you can bear the heavy burden of the Land of Rain. Although you are now chief of the Rain village, do not merge the Rain village with the shinobi sect for now. That would draw the attention of the 5 great shinobi villages. Mu Yue favored the advice. His system was a teacher's system, not a rapid shinobi sect expansion program. Merging prematurely would make the Land of Rain look like a sudden, powerful new player and invite suppression from the established 5. Keeping the village's relationship separate while managing both served his long-term plans better. You may publicly claim I am still alive, Hanzo added. If intelligence work is done properly, no one should learn the truth for years. Mu Yue considered Hanzo's proposal. He did not plan a century-long funeral, nor did he intend to bury Hanzo in an unmarked grave. He wanted a proper Rain Chief's funeral, but he also saw the strategic merit in concealing his own role and Hanzo's death. The scroll then listed a few names: Guangjun, Pig Assistant, some of the Rain Jonin Hanzo considered capable. Hanzo had only room for a few names on the scroll and indicated a longer document for Mu Yue's reference. Mu Yue found and skimmed that appendix. It confirmed that the Rain Village had recovered much since the Second Shinobi World War. Before the Shinobi sect's rise, the village had been prospering. Afterward, it had been strained by confrontation and lost contracts, but it remained a relatively healthy force. 1,652 shinobi, plus 200 from the Shinobi sect, nearly 2,000 that can be mobilized, Mu Yue said to himself, setting the village roster aside. With over 1,800 loyal fighters, he could maintain order in the Land of Rain and dispatch forces to support the Shinobi sect. When the meeting time arrived, Mu Yue led Nagato into the largest conference room. The room had a single chair with a backrest. The rest was empty. Mu Yue sat in that chair, Nagato standing beside him. Sosuke, Chief. One by one the Rain Jonin filed in, greeting him. When everyone had taken their places, Mu Yue cleared his throat. The meeting begins. First, Hanzo's funeral. The room fell solemn. This was not a small matter. Hanzo had been killed by Sosuke. If Sosuke brushed it off, no amount of previous goodwill would make the former subordinates comfortable. My intention is to follow normal standards. Hanzo will receive the funeral befitting a Rain Chief, Mu Yue said. A murmur of approval rippled through them. However, Hanzo had another idea. He was concerned that if the 5 great shinobi villages knew the Rain Village was under my control, they would become apprehensive. He proposed creating the illusion that he was still alive to buy development time for the Land of Rain. Mu Yue looked at Nagato. Nagato walked forward, took the scroll, and unfolded it where everyone could see. The Rain Jonin recognized Hanzo's handwriting at once. When their eyes fell on the line, "By the time you see this scroll, I will already be dead," several quietly reddened. After a moment of silence, Mu Yue addressed the man standing closest on the left. "Guangjun, your thoughts?" Guangjun blinked, startled to be asked. He composed himself and spoke seriously. "I think Hanzo's idea is sound. We can bury him properly, but conceal the news. Konoha is already watching the Shinobi sect. If they knew Sosuke had also become chief here, they would be wary. Iwagakure's attitude toward the Shinobi sect might change. Tsunagakure has always been suspicious of the Rain Village. They could act if they learned the truth." Many Rain Jonin nodded. The benefits of secrecy outweighed the cost. It didn't mean Hanzo would be buried in obscurity, only that the funeral would not be made a public statement to the outside world. "Hanzo contributed so much to the Rain Village. We can't let him die in obscurity," another voiced, soft but passionate. "At least the villagers should be told." The plea was hard to refute. Hanzo's leadership had shaped the village. Without him, they might be ordinary. Mu Yue scanned the room and said, "Here's my plan. The funeral will be held according to the usual standards for a chief." He paused as Guangjun opened his mouth, but Mu Yue continued. "However, my identity as the new chief will not be publicly announced. We will present a visible chief to the outside, someone who will mislead other forces. For now, the Rain Village's formal relationship with the Shinobi sect will remain unchanged." It was a compromise, a dignified funeral for Hanzo, the outward illusion of Hanzo's continued presence, and no public revelation that the Shinobi sect and the Rain Village were directly linked through Sosuke. Guangjun praised the idea. "Sosuke's proposal is better than mine. Though it sacrifices some of Hanzo's deterrent effect, it will put neighboring villages at ease." Pig Assistant also gave his approval. He admitted he had been ready to demand a grand public funeral, but now recognized Sosuke's motive and felt sheepish to have misjudged him. No one raised objections. If Mu Yue had a system to measure their favorability, he felt certain they were warming to him. He also addressed the Shinobi sect's role directly. There would be no immediate merger, but exchanges would be deepened. Rain Village Shinobi would study at the Shinobi sect. and Shinobi sect members would come on missions in the Rain Village. Mutual integration, not assimilation. This would build trust and a shared identity. After concluding village affairs, Mu Yue opened his system panel. Danzo Shimura's death had indeed rippled through the missions. With Danzo gone, the life missions tied to Obito and Shisui shifted. Shisui's mission had moved forward the most. He'd cleared a mission node outright. Danzo had truly lived up to his reputation as the king of blame. His death produced significant consequences.